Opinions expressed by the guests, listeners, and hosts of any program on Word Radio do not necessarily reflect those of ownership, management, or advertisers of this station.
And 5. And welcome to the Wednesday pre-July 4th edition, pre-short-term holiday edition, and all sorts of other words to say about it. It's a very complicated and nuanced holiday, July 4th, that is, here on the home of Black Talk Media. It's WURD, and it is Reality Check. It is Reality Check Wednesday. Before we head into the July 4th holiday. That'll be tomorrow, so there is no Reality Check tomorrow, and obviously we're off on Fridays, so you will hear us next week, next Monday, 4 p.m. I'm your host, Charles Ellison, here on the home of Black Talk Media, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURD, here in the Word Studios in Philadelphia. Been crisscrossing between Philadelphia and DC this week, so good to be here with Troy Wilmore on the board of steel, as well, executive producer for Reality Check. You can also catch us at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check, if you want to get directly with the program, with the show, with the host, creator, executive producer of Reality Check. At Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check. There's been a lot of conversation there as of recent. Obviously, don't forget to go to at onWURD, hashtag onWURD, for more of the social media conversation for the station. There are a lot of conversation going on there. We actually have a very, very busy program, very busy Wednesday edition just for you, ready to serve to you, the WRD listener. Also, just at the top, just to get you set up for when phone lines do open, 215-634-8065. Take note of that, 215-634-8065. Also, 866-361-0900. And as always, go to at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check, if you'd like to chime in on the social media conversation. And we do read your tweets out loud on air as well. And don't forget to also go to thebnote.com. There's some polling assessments that'll be coming up, the latest polling assessments. We're going to show you some of the shifts, the disruptions that have happened in the Democratic primary field. So that's going to be coming a little bit later on this evening as well. We've held off for a couple of weeks on doing a polling assessment of the 2020 Democratic primary because we wanted to see exactly what polling would look like after a series of racial gaffes made by Joe Biden, who's a presumed front runner, and based on polling data is still the front runner, even though he's lost some ground since last Thursday. And also wanted to see what that field would look like in the post-debate landscape. So obviously there was some big disruption there. We were talking about it too earlier on Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton. I had a really good texture conversation with him. A lot of great folks were calling in and had some good questions and comments as well. So we'll be talking about that, I'm sure, a little bit later on or throughout the course of this Wednesday edition, and also definitely be talking about that next week. And just look out for it at thebnote.com. Joining me now is, speaking of media, is David Morgan. He is the president of the Multicultural Media Correspondents Association. Was formerly, in his former life, was a lobbyist on corporate tax policy at American Express, and now has delved very much deeper as not only managing partner of D. Morgan and Partners, but also as president of the Multicultural Media Correspondents Association, delved into the issue, the challenge of diversity in media. He's here to talk a bit about this very important topic, particularly when we have a major election on the horizon. He joins us by phone. David, how are you doing?
Charles, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
All right, excellent. No, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate this. So talk about MMCA, Multicultural Media Correspondents Association. Exactly what is that? What do you do?
So thanks for asking. So the Multicultural Media Correspondents Association, we're a non-profit focused on moving the needle on media diversity. Mm-hmm. We've been in existence for about 4 years now, and we're coming up on our signature annual event where we're highlighting our call to action to move the needle on media diversity by bringing together some media influencers mm-hmm. To highlight that. And we're excited to be kicking that off.
Mm-hmm. Now, and for more information, you can go to mmcadc.org, correct? Do I have that website correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent.
mmcadc.org. You got it correct.
All right, excellent. And you'll get more information about the upcoming 4th annual MMCD and inaugural MMCA Media Diversity Summit and Reception. That's going to be taking place next week, next Tuesday, July 9th, and you'll probably see me there as well, David. Talk about the state of diversity in media. Where do you think it is? Speaking of disruptions, I've seen disruptions in that media space as well. I've seen a big difference, for example, in diversity, particularly in mainstream media, now compared to how it was when, for example, when President Obama was in office, right? I mean, we've seen some shifts. So what's your thoughts on the overall state of diversity in media?
I think it's horrible. In fact, I think we're in a media diversity crisis, and it really has some very serious economic, social, and political implications that I think people should pay really strong attention to. First, if you think about it, people of color are 40% of the population, but they have no ownership at all in an industry that represents over 20% of the economy. Let me say that, 20% of the economy, and as you know, have the power to dictate pretty much how we think and feel. So an incredibly powerful entity. We still see that misrepresentation and biased coverage of different communities is fueling the fire of hate and division, especially now as we go into the 2020 elections. Third, if you think about it, across the landscape, a lot of our black, brown, and independent newspapers and media outlets on a local level, radio stations, are dying. With that, we're losing the biggest power towards civic engagement, community involvement, and sort of checks and balances on the government. And worst of all, for someone like myself, who's a father of a young black boy, not being able to see positive image reinforced in mainstream media is killing the dreams and aspirations of black and brown children all across this country.
Yeah, you know, I think when people hear this conversation, when they're exposed to it, I don't know if it's registering, when I'm talking about people outside of the media business, because those of us who are in the media business, we see what's happening. We see what you just described, and we understand how important and how critical this is and how the stakes are so high on a number of levels. It's not just about having, for example, more black faces on TV, right? It's much bigger than that, because on one hand, people see media representations all the time, whether it's on a news program or whether it's in a movie. They see all these media distortions of the type of people we are or how we live, and then, you know, on the other hand, you know, they're saying how there's very few of us that are in media that are doing like what we're doing now, you and I. So what do you think? What explains that, David, that sort of inability for like the larger community, you know, particularly black and brown communities, or just your average person, your average listener or viewer, that sort of not where they're not getting it, they're not making that connection, they're not realizing how important this media conversation is?
Well, you know, in fairness, it's hard to break through the noise, but let me make one clear statement. Who owns the story, who controls the story, controls who wins and who loses. That's what my board members reinforce to me all of the time. So if you have one entity, one group that's controlling what stories are being told, how they're being reported, and also determining who's telling the story, you can easily see how certain interests get championed and others do not. What's even more critical as we go into this 2020 election, when we're talking about coverage of the elections and the different issues, not having a diverse media has the situation where we'll see a situation where the lens in which most of these stories are being told are not reflecting the larger perspective of the folks that have the intimate knowledge and awareness of some of the more pressing social and economic and political issues that's addressing most Americans. And so one of the key factors that you highlighted, it's really awareness, and I think part of what we're doing with our call to action is sort of highlighting and reinforcing the message in the story that this is not a Hollywood problem. This is a problem that affects all Americans and not just marginalized communities, but the entire America has to pay attention to this issue. What are some of the strategies that we can employ as a community, as a collective community, you know, one also as Black and Brown or Black media professionals, but also with the collective grassroots Black community in enforcing more diversity or ensuring more diversity in media? So, one strategy is obviously an event like this event that's coming up next Tuesday, but what are some other strategies that could be deployed? Yeah, so this event is a part of a larger call to action, and the reason why we started MMCA is because we wanted to have a fulcrum, a point that people sort of who just want to do a little bit more. So the first thing I would say is everyone who cares about media diversity, once they understand the issue, should make a commitment to do more. What we're doing is we are fully engaged here in Washington with nationalizing the issue, so we are engaging Congress, and I'm happy to report that there's so many more media diversity champions in Congress, and we're honoring one in particular, Val Demings, at our dinner. But they are now nationalizing the issue and are actually taking legislative steps. Last year, there was an effort for Congress to reaffirm its commitment to media diversity. So that increased awareness and nationalizing of the issue is very important. The second, what we're focused on is creating a common ground environment and being a trusted convenience so that we could bring together the media stakeholders like yourself, but with the policymakers and also the media industry owners to start identifying and sort of put on the table and discussing concrete solutions that could move the needle forward. But third, and for us, we're very excited about, we need to focus on the media stakeholders of color themselves. So we launched something called the Next Gen Big Break program, and it's all about identifying and propelling and fueling the next generation of storytellers, of journalists, of media entrepreneurs, so that they can get their big break, because we know with that representation, and for us it's not just in front of the camera or telling the news, it's the folks behind the camera, the folks in ownership. So we're doing everything we can to put resources in place to propel these groups forward. And you mentioned the website, but going to the website is not just about learning about the events, which are great, and I want to go into more details, but to learn more about our overall platform and what we're doing to move the needle forward, including anyone who's a media stakeholder currently or aspiring to be. We'd love for you to sign our media directory so we can know who you are and we can start feeding information and resources. And to underscore that, later this year we're actually putting some money behind what we're doing for the young entrepreneurs to help them move their businesses forward.
That's good to know. You can go to mmcadc.org for more information about the Multicultural Media Correspondents Association. David Morgan is joining us. He's the president of the MMCA, and he's joining us here on Reality Check on WURD. the home of Black Talk Media. Speaking of Black Talk Media, right? Do you feel sometimes, David, the conversation can get somewhat awkward, perhaps even a bit controversial or somewhat thorny when on one level you're talking about how to have Black journalists penetrate mainstream media, how to become more active in mainstream media and in major media outlets that are controlling 20% of the economy. But on this other level, we have Black-owned or independently Black-owned media outlets like a WURD. What do you do about them? Does that process or does that effort to funnel more Black journalists, more Black media professionals into mainstream media, does that in any way take away from the struggles, the challenges that still very critical Black media, whether it's a Black newspaper or a Black radio station, or even a Black-owned, which is kind of rare these days, a Black-owned television station or cable network have to go through these days?
Oh, absolutely not. And I think both are incredibly important, and I'm glad you highlighted both. I was just listening to BET Awards, and Tyler Perry said something quite amazing, right? He said, while you guys were fighting for your seat at the table, I was out building my own table. So absolutely, we would support an effort like Tyler Perry in independent media ownership because, we have honored Kathy Hughes, we've honored Armstrong Williams.
Right.
Independent media ownership is incredibly important for that alternative voice. But what we have to be aware is that mainstream media is still the most powerful voice. And so these efforts to incorporate more diversity of voices, more diversity of programming in mainstream media has to happen. So these efforts need to happen parallel, and in no way should they be viewed as being contradictory or in way taking away the relevance or importance of either effort.
Right. You have to walk and
we
chew.
do both, by the way.
Exactly. You have to walk and chew gum at the same time, so to speak. And how are the major media outlets or major media institutions themselves responding to efforts like this? And it's, of course, it's MMCA. You're doing what you have to do with this summit and reception, but also the other activities that you described that you're involved in. But this has been a discussion that's been going on for a long time. Mainstream media outlets are large media conglomerates and institutions. They're aware of it. Sometimes they may act as if they're not aware of it, but they're aware of it. They know what they're doing. Sometimes they may sort of feign incredulity or disbelief that some sort of programming slipped through and distorted the image of people of color or of Black people especially, but they know what's going on. So that can be frustrating at times, I'm sure. What are those conversations like, David, between an organization like yourself and also some of these other major media institutions?
Thanks for asking, and that's why I wanted to underscore that our view is that we want to be a trusted broker. We want consensus-based solutions. So we have lots of these conversations, and they're all over the place, right? Some are better than others, but they all seem to be moving in the right direction, and I think it's because of the energy that we're seeing from Capitol Hill and the groundswell across the landscape. I can tout that our events, we're super excited to have Comcast, NBC Universal as our presenting sponsor. And, as you know, they just released 2 new independent Black outlets on their network, which, again, is a small incremental process. And I don't know if when I saw the debate, and I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that the first moderators was, a Black man, a Latinx man, and a woman, right? So, and it reflected the diversity on the stage. So I think these are incremental steps, and we will continue to have these conversations. And, we're not moving to sort of just identify problems, because no one invests in problems.
Right.
People invest in solutions. And so we're very much so solutions-oriented, and we encourage and want to work constructively with the media companies to work together, move the needle forward, which is a good segue for me to talk about right after our dinner on Tuesday. We're going to host our inaugural Media Diversity Innovation Summit on Capitol Hill. We're excited that it's going to be the honorary host will be Val Demings, who's from Democrat out of Florida, who's one of those media diversity champions I mentioned. But we will also have diverse panels that cover all of the different issues around media diversity. We'll start off with a dynamic panel looking at media diversity challenges then and now, with some pioneers in the media industry, including Dorothy Gillum, who you know is the first black woman to work at the Washington Post, and Helen Zia, who was the first editor of Miss Magazine. So you'll have the overlap of the women's movement and the Kerner Commission and the push towards diversity. Mm-hmm. Then we're going to have a very strong panel discussion with media owners of color. It's going to be moderated by one of my favorite actresses, Erica Alexander, who's now moved into the ownership production side.
Right.
And launched
we had her on about
Color Farm Media.
Yeah, we had her on about maybe I think about a month ago.
Absolutely.
We talked with her about that.
Super excited about that, and she'll have a very diverse panel. On one end, we'll have media owners like Tim Wang and Dewan McCoy, who one owns a big print media company here in D.C., and one owns several radio stations. But we also will have Carla Santiago, who is in Hollywood and just launched a company under Macro that's really going to be disrupting how Hollywood is sourcing talent and giving the talent agency a run for their money, a big disruptor. So we're very excited about that panel. But then we're moving to what we call the business of media, and we're going to have a panel on media advertising. You know, that's the lifeblood of the media industry. So we'll have a discussion, which I'm very encouraged about the issue of cultural competency and the big challenge across the landscape of how do you market to a more diverse audience.
Right.
We think that's a huge opportunity. And then finally, we'll have a panel on media diversity best practices, where we'll hear from some of these big media companies about what are they doing to move the needle forward. So this is all happening on Capitol Hill in front of legislators, and this is all solutions focused. So it's not just going to be laying out the problem, but it's going to be sort of prescribing solutions that could be vetted and hopefully implemented soon. So we're very excited about that.
All right. Looking forward to getting some more information on that and also seeing or interfacing with some of the folks who will be there in Washington, D.C., and having those conversations. We've been talking with David Morgan. He is president of the Multicultural Media Correspondents Association. You can find more information on MMCA at mmcadc.org. Also at mmcadc on social media, on Twitter more specifically, to learn more there, to engage them. David, thanks so much for your time. So I look forward to meeting you.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. All right, let's take a very quick break. When we come back on the other side, we're going to be talking with Vanessa K. DeLuca. She is the former editor-in-chief of Essence magazine, and now she's editor-in-chief of a new magazine that just dropped called Zora magazine. Yes, Zora magazine, after Zora Neale Hurston, or in homage to Zora Neale Hurston. It's on Medium, which is a online publication platform, but she's here to talk with us about Zora. They just rolled out recently. Got some fantastic, dynamic, fascinating content that's there. Vanessa K. DeLuca coming up next here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word app. We'll be right back.
Now, a traffic update on Word Radio.
It's a busy commute on the Philly roads. This traffic report is sponsored by Positive Coaching Alliance. Jam traffic on the eastbound Schuylkill Expressway, getting on at 202 down to Belmont, then again Montgomery to South Street. Westbound Schuylkill jams from University to the Vine, the Boulevard out to Belmont, and then you're heavy from 476 out to 202. On the Vine Expressway eastbound, you're jammed 76 across to 95. Westbound is jammed from Broad Street back to the Schuylkill Expressway. 95 northbound, stop and go Naaman's Road to the Commodore Barry Bridge, again from Penn's Landing to Allegheny. South on 95, that jams the Betsy Ross Bridge down to Girard, and again from 420 to the Commodore Barry. Blue Route southbound jamming from St. David's all the way down to I-95, and the Boulevard northbound slows the Schuylkill Expressway into Broad Street. Closures around the city of Philadelphia, including portions of the Ben Franklin Parkway around Independence Mall. That is as they get set up for 4th of July festivities in the city. Walt Whitman Bridge eastbound is jammed into Jersey. That's because 42 southbound jams from the Walt Whitman Bridge down to 295. 295 northbound jams 130 to Gibbstown with a vehicle fire on the shoulder, and again 42 to 168 with a crash in the left lane.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA, a national nonprofit, offers more than 1,000 free online resources for youth and high school sports coaches, parents, students, and administrators. Visit PCADevZone.org.
For more traffic information, log on to SIGAlert.com. I'm Brendan Joseph with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Brothers and sisters!
Don't miss The Source
Weekdays 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
on Word Radio.
WordRadio.com and the Word Radio app.
Turn up summer with McDonald's Minute Maid slushies and their delicious flavors like blue raspberry, sweet peach, and fruit punch. Only at participating McDonald's.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
This is Word Radio.
Independent Black Media.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Reality Check
With Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio
and WordRadio.com.
Welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM. Listening beyond the Philadelphia area, it is WordRadio.com and also on Word app as well if you were listening to us globally, as many of you do, so we appreciate that. Also, continue to go to @EllisonReport, #RealityCheck, @EllisonReport, #RealityCheck to chime in on the social media conversation, to also participate in the on-air conversation that's taking place now here on Reality Check. We have actually our one of our listeners, Worker at Overtime Rules, looking for advancement and diversity, begs the question, why has the affirmative action program not delivered? So that's at Overtime Rules. And I think he was listening to our conversation just a few moments ago with David Morgan of the Multicultural Media Correspondents Association. They're having a big gathering or convening next week in Washington, D.C. We're going to be talking about diversity in media, so diversity and inclusion, always a big conversation. And as David Morgan was saying, it's in a state of crisis. So he was just real about that. It very much is. It's probably in a state that is on some levels that, it's been what we've been used to for so many years, and on other levels there's some unprecedented dimensions to it, and some very urgent, alarming dimensions that we have to pay attention to, we have to talk about, and we have to find solutions to as well. Speaking of media, and speaking of new, fresh, innovative media efforts that have been happening, there's this new magazine called Zora. It's a new magazine by Medium, which has been out for about several years now. It's this online publication platform that a lot of people participate in. But we have Vanessa K. DeLuca, who is the editor-in-chief of Zora magazine. She's also the former editor-in-chief of Essence magazine. I know you all know what Essence is, but we're going to get you schooled about Zora, and to learn more about it is Vanessa K. DeLuca. She joins us by phone. Vanessa, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. All
right, thanks for joining us. And for more information on Zora, and really not just for information, but to read some really dynamic content. And Zora's it's a magazine focused on women of color, on black women and black women conversation, perspective, culture. Go to zora.medium.com. And so is that pretty much, I mean, you can explain it better, Vanessa. Is that pretty much what Zora is trying to capture, the essence of black women here, and what black women are discussing and thinking about?
Well, not just Black women, but all women of color.
Mm-hmm.
This is an opportunity for us to really highlight and showcase the lived experiences of women of color,
Mm-hmm.
and to make sure that those voices that often get sidelined, that often don't get an opportunity to reveal themselves. This is the place and the space where we can have very real, unapologetic conversations about what we go through.
Mm-hmm. What are some of those conversations that are taking place? What are some of the topics that you're tackling at Zora? So, for example, I know one of the top features right now is about mental health. And I had actually convened a conversation last year at the Congressional Black Caucus about mental health. That was on their policy agenda. So that's a very real conversation for Black women. Then there was this other column that I noticed about bamboo earrings, and by one of your writers, Tanisha Ford, is a great piece. And just some things I didn't realize about bamboo earrings as a child of the 80s and 90s. But, just something because it was just so pervasive. But, talk about some of those topics that are resonating throughout Zora.
Well, it's a wide range of topics. I mean, we do personal essays, Q&A, profiles. We talk a lot about culture, identity, opinion, of course, and even self-care, because we know that as women of color, that's something that's important to us. And we want to keep it broad and wide because we don't want to put limitations on what that conversation can be. So you can have an essay from Daniel Moody Mills talking about how the 2020 election is going to be a nightmare and how it's really going to be an insane lead up to the next to the presidential race. But you can also have more personal, kind of thoughtful pieces about mental health in the Black community and the Latinx community, and how we need to talk about it more, and how we need to not be ashamed to share those stories with one another. So I feel that what we've created is a safe space to have some very real, candid conversations that you're not going to see anywhere else, because a lot of times people don't want to, they want to showcase more of the entertainment and fashion and beauty and that part of who we are, and maybe not go quite as deep into some of the other areas.
Mm-hmm. What's that been like, too, creating a magazine like Zora and something it's completely online? It's also you're building it on another publications or another platform. Medium's been around. Medium's not really a publication. It's more of kind of long form Twitter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a platform. It's a product, and they've just really started looking at how do we create more publications within the platform that appeal to very specific audiences, which I think is a very interesting business model to kind of to approach. There's definitely an audience out there for this kind of content, as well as some of the other content that you'll find on the platform. There's definitely folks who want more long form, who want more reported pieces, who want more features, who just want more thoughtful, thought-provoking content. And I think that Medium is, because it's so democratic, anybody can go on the platform and post something, that's important to them. I think they're making a really great statement by saying this is an audience that we care about, that we have an interest in, and that we want to make sure we're providing content for.
How big of a moment are we going through right now as it relates to women of color? Right. I know one of the big conversations, for example, coming out of the, speaking of Daniel Moody Mills, who's a contributor on, she rotates every now and then on our Pressing Matters Roundtable. So shout out to her. She's talking about the 2020 election, but, she's also basing some of that feeling off of the experiences of the 2016 election. I know the big conversation then was how Black women how they electorally behaved, how they tried to save the world in 2016. So, you know, what sort of moment are we going through as it pertains to women of color?
I think that women of color have a huge opportunity to come together collectively and make our wants and needs known. That you cannot underestimate the power that we can have collectively. And what I think people are starting to realize is that we have to think more about building these coalitions and collaborations in order to be successful. I mean, as you think about how many changes have happened just in voting rights, voter suppression, gerrymandering, there's definitely a campaign to make sure that we don't have, that kind of authority as we did in 2016. So we have to be mindful that there's always some challenges that we're going to have to face, but yet we still have an incredible amount of power, and it's up to us to wield it, quite honestly.
The other thing too is that you're in a space, or you're in a zone or universe which is very crowded. There's a lot of noise in the online space, right? And there's just a lot of noise in the media space, and the not just the online publishing space, but the space of commentary and analysis of writing. So how does Zora differentiate itself from all these other efforts, all these other platforms and publications and magazines, whether they're e-zines or physical magazines that you can hold in your hand? What makes Zora special?
What I think is special about Zora is that we've made an intentional decision to make sure that we're centering the voices of women of color. This is, this is content that is by, for, and about women of color. And I can't really think of a platform where that kind of like the centerpiece, the crux, the touchstone that you're using to determine what kind of content you're going to put out there. And what I found remarkable is how many people have reached out and said, "Oh, finally, I can't, and we have something like this, a space where we can tell our stories authentically and tell them, honestly, and be unapologetic," because there are so many other mainstream spaces where that kind of candor isn't welcome. So to have a space where you can have these really deep conversations and amongst each other, amongst women of color, where we get to see that we're, in many ways, we have a lot of similarities, a lot of things that we can connect on, I think is kind of I think it's the direction that we need to be moving in if we're truly going to, harness our power as a force.
We're talking with Vanessa K. DeLuca. She is editor-in-chief of a new publication. It's fresh on the block. It's called Zora.medium.com, fresh on the online internet block. It's a part of the Medium universe of publications. I go to Medium all the time. Zora.medium.com. Also, you can follow them at Zora Mag on Twitter, at Zora Mag on Twitter, and to learn more about them and also to engage them, maybe offer some feedback on some of their content there. You will find a wide range of content and stories and perspectives and narratives from a number of women of color, including once again our one of our contributors, Danielle Moody Mills. It's good to see her there, just recently writing about the 2020 election that's coming up. We've been joined by Vanessa K. DeLuca. What's also next for Zora? So you've got the magazine. It's people are starting to talk about it or buzzing about it. It's catching fire a bit. So are there other plans? Are there other activities online and offline or on site that are being planned for Zora right now, Vanessa?
Oh, definitely. So we will definitely have a presence at NABJ in August. Make sure that you check us out there. And we plan to have a presence at CDC, Congressional Black Caucus, in September. just wanting to, make sure that we're connecting with people, not just online but offline. And of course, there will be many more bigger packages, bigger franchise ideas that we're going to bring, to bring forward, especially as we think about the presidential race and how we want to be influential in that conversation. So, so a lot to look forward to.
All right. Vanessa K. DeLuca, editor-in-chief of Zora Magazine. I'm looking forward to learning more about Zora and perhaps bumping into you at the upcoming Congressional Black Caucus as well later on in the fall. Go to zora.medium.com for more information and great content, and at Zora Mag as well on Twitter if you like to interface with them on social media there. She's been joining us here on Reality Check. Vanessa, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. This is a great project. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Take care. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back on the other side, we'll open up the phone lines at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Now, a traffic update
on Word Radio.
It's a busy commute on the Philly roads. This traffic report is sponsored by Positive Coaching Alliance. Jam traffic on the eastbound Schuylkill Expressway getting on at 202 down to Belmont, then again Montgomery to South Street. Westbound Schuylkill jams from University to the Vine, the Boulevard out to Belmont, and then you're heavy from 476 out to 202. On the Vine Expressway eastbound, you're jammed 76 across to 95. Westbound is jammed from Broad Street back to the Schuylkill Expressway. 95 northbound, stop and go Naaman's Road to the Commodore Barry Bridge, again from Penn's Landing to Allegheny. South on 95, that jams the Betsy Ross Bridge down to Girard, and again from 420 to the Commodore Barry. Blue Route southbound jamming from St. David's all the way down to I-95, and the Boulevard northbound slows the Schuylkill Expressway into Broad Street. Closures around the city of Philadelphia, including portions of the Ben Franklin Parkway around Independence Mall. That is as they get set up for 4th of July festivities in the city. Walt Whitman Bridge eastbound is jammed into Jersey. That's because 42 southbound jams from the Walt Whitman Bridge down to 295. 295 northbound jams 130 to Gibbstown with a vehicle fire on the shoulder, and again 42 to 168 with a crash in the left lane.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA, a national nonprofit, offers more than 1,000 free online resources for youth and high school sports coaches, parents, students, and administrators. Visit PCADevZone.org.
For more traffic information, log on to SIGAlert.com. I'm Brendan Joseph with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Brothers and sisters!
Don't miss The Source.
Weekdays 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
on Word Radio.
WordRadio.com and the Word Radio app.
Philadelphia families, you can find free quality pre-K in a center near you. PHL Pre-K, the city's free pre-K program, is now enrolling. There are no income requirements. Children must be 3 or 4 years old on September 1st. That's it. Call 844-PHL-PRE-K or visit phlprek.org to find a program. There are over 140 locations to choose from. PHL Pre-K prepares kids for success in school. Seats are filling up fast, so call today. That's 844-PHL Pre-K. This program is made possible by the Philadelphia Beverage Tax.
Support independent black media and join the Forward movement now at 215-425-7875
or visit wordradio.com.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work. Sorry, I'm late. Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi. Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio
and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open at the moment at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. And then 5 o'clock hour, we're going to be talking with Eleanor Fort again of Green for All, talking about the issue of transportation equity. There's a lot there. And want to bring her back on. It's a fascinating conversation we had last time. There's a few things I didn't know about that she schooled me on. And so we're going to be bringing her back for our weekly onWURD segment. So definitely looking forward to that. And also we have the younger brother of Joe Biden is joining us later on today in the 5 o'clock hour, Frank Biden. And he's talking about, actually he's not going to be talking about his brother running for president. He is actually talking about a class action lawsuit against the Florida sugar industry for toxic sugarcane burning. So this is a big issue, and for years, and this is what Frank Biden's going to be talking about, Florida sugar producers have been sickening generations of children and also the elderly in primarily black communities deep in the Everglades, and that's been happening for quite a long time. And so now there's a big lawsuit that Frank Biden's going to talk about by the sugar against the sugar industry, the Florida sugar industry. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. So Philadelphia Inquirer reporting a little bit earlier on this afternoon that Philadelphia Energy Solutions has extended the termination date of nearly 1,000 employees at the PES refinery. So the termination date was for July 12th. It is now August 25th, and that's going to give workers more time to as they figure out how to resell the property or restart it. I'm very concerned about the restart plan that's being put in motion, and there's been all of this sympathy that's been towards the plant, and basically many business leaders, many politicians in Philadelphia essentially using the workers as a way to reopen that plant. So the workers are being used, and essentially, I mean, let's just say it, let's just call it for what it is. Politicians are basically like pimping the PES refinery workers as a way to keep this heavy polluting, very toxic natural gas refinery, this oil refinery, the biggest air polluter in Philly, to keep that open, instead of having conversations, instead of getting into the planning of how do you transform this property, how do you not resell it so it can just pollute more toxic fumes into the air. No, let's have a conversation about how do you recreate, how do you transform this property into something that can produce a truly clean energy source, and how can you get Philly truly to being 100% renewable and relying 100% on clean energy by 2050, if you want to get to that point. And so I'm concerned. I'm concerned that the conversation had the citywide conversation. We've been talking about it all day, and it's a few folks who are avoiding this conversation, a few public folks, a few folks who are in that stakeholder decision-making process who've been avoiding having a conversation here on Reality Check about this. But once again, where is the conversation? Where's the conversation about the residents who've gotten sick as a result of, because of the Philadelphia Energy Solutions refinery? No one's talking about that. Well, I'm not going to say no one's talking about it because we're talking about it, but where's the coverage of that? Where's the dominating narrative for people who've gotten sick from the PES refinery, as far as dealing with suddenly with all sorts of respiratory illnesses, asthma, and also cancer, people who've already died? We're not having that conversation about how they can restart their lives, how those neighborhoods can rebuild, how those communities can rebuild as well. We're not having that conversation. Like they're totally leaving. I'm not hearing that from Senator Bob Casey's office. I'm not hearing that from Congressman Dwight Evans' office. I'm not hearing that from the mayor's office. I don't know if the city council president is on it. It's just, it's stunning how there is, I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance or if it's just really truly giving us a snapshot into the true character of public leaders in Philadelphia, that you would completely just ignore. The years, okay, they're busy talking about the economic impact of the plant, which is ironic because the plant owes $4 billion in back tax. They're not even trying to collect that. So it's like, now you're worried about economic impact? Like, where was all that worry while the plant owed you $4 billion plus, right? So, but now you're worried about the economic impact. But where's the effort to calculate the economic impact, the years, generations long economic impact on those communities that have been in close proximity to that plant? It's very upsetting. It's very disappointing. It's very disappointing on a number of levels. It says a lot, once again, about City Hall. It's saying a lot about the delegation of folks that we send to Capitol Hill, and the fact that they're not focused on it. They don't want to talk about it. So I got to give, yes, I'm going to give props to Councilwoman at Large, Helen Gibbs. She came on, she talked about it. She kept it a bit real with us. Not openly endorsing her or anything like that, but I appreciate her coming on there. Or State Rep Joanna McClinton, she came on there. But other folks, they're avoiding the conversation. Why? Like, what's the problem? Why avoid a conversation about actual residents who are going through that kind of struggle? Why are you avoiding a conversation about sick residents? I mean, we're having a conversation about Hahnemann University Hospital closing and how that's a public health crisis. So it should be okay to segue into a conversation about the public health crisis that's been created by Philadelphia Energy Solutions. What's wrong with that? And what's the plan for that? Like, I understand you have 1,000 workers and some of them have families, and I understand that they're facing a very uncertain, tough time. I get that. But I also understand kind of how that industry works, it's already happening as it's unfolding before us, even as PES is going through bankruptcy and trying to manage a potential shutdown of this refinery. They've got a plan for them. So it's the good thing about the workers is that they've got institutions and businesses and unions backing them up. The residents who've been getting sick from that refinery don't have anyone backing them up. That's what I'm talking about. Like, and they should expect city, state, and also federal elected officials to give them that kind of support. And I'm just not seeing it. They're not seeing it. I mean, unless, please put me in my place on this. I would love to see them have that support. So if I'm missing something, if someone is indeed giving them that support in some office or some agency somewhere and I haven't seen it yet, please tell me, put me in my place on that. I would love for someone to put me in my place on it. I would love for one of those city leaders to come on the show and say, hey, Charles, we got it handled. We got you covered. We got the residents covered. I'm going to put you in your place. I'm going to tell you about yourself and just tell you that I'm serious. I'm not trying not to be facetious here. I want someone to literally put me in my place and tell me that something is being done about the sick and socioeconomically challenged residents in those neighborhoods around that refinery, that they're being taken care of. Please tell me that they're being taken care of. So if I'm wrong, if there is an effort afoot, call me. Just call us here. Let me know. Let me know. I'll eat the humble pie on that. I really will. But right now, I'm just not seeing it, and I'm concerned. All right, let's go to the phone lines. I'm sorry. Let's go to Mary out of Mount Airy, who's calling in for a reality check. Ms. Mary, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine, Charles. How you doing?
I've had better days. I'm not fine on this. I'm sorry. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just not fine. I'm not fine on it.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what this country has been doing for centuries. Mm-hmm. We never go after the businesses, the corporations, for human rights violations. We don't go after them in this country, nor do we go after them in other countries. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is basically, how can my 1% stay 1% and above? Mm-hmm. They never took into consideration for people that are basically employees. And this is why I've always been a union person, you know, because I look like that's an extra layer of protection for me as a worker. Mm-hmm. You know, and my father was a union person. My whole family, you know, except for my sister, her hospital never had a union until after she got sick, you know, and but, you know, people need to realize if it wasn't for unions in place trying to protect workers, you basically have no rights in this country as an employee. Now they're trying to pass this cost of insurance on to the employees, you know, with this Medicare for all. Medicare is a ripoff. And I'm going to tell you, and Social Security. I mean, we paid into that all our lives as seniors. I mean, from the first day that you start working, you pay into Social Security and Medicare. That's a legitimate person and taxpayer. Right. Not people working under the table, which is illegal, number one. And you know, with this Medicare for all, it does not pay for prescription drugs. That's the highest cost to anybody in this country. I mean, Medicare only pays 80% of your hospitalization and your doctor visit. You have to have the other 20% on board because you can go bankrupt if you're hospitalized, knowing that you may need a surgery that costs over $600,000. You know, and what we have been doing as a country, if you have assets, these hospitals, they will take your home away for you to pay that hospital bill. That's the difference. The only program that this country has that pays full cost for everything, that's Medicaid. You have to be below the poverty guideline, or you can be an undocumented person in this country, go to the emergency room, even for a thumbtack problem, a thumb problem, and we will pay the emergency medical costs under the Emergency Medical Treatment Act. Mm-hmm. You know, and this is why I've always been against people not paying into the tax system. I don't care who's in this country, but make sure that they have a legitimate Social Security card when they can pay into the tax program that we have in place. Because when you don't pay, that means we have to pay extra for your cost. Mm-hmm. You know, and this is why the Republicans never wanted to back President Obama under the Gang of Eight, because they had the program in place where not only were they going to give undocumented people a temporary resident card and a valid Social Security card, they were going to have them to pay back taxes, the employer and the landlord. When they said the landlord and the employer had to pay back taxes, that's when it fell under the Republican Party. You know, so people need to wake up. These social programs is a ripoff, and you see it now where the Republicans and the politicians are taken away from the Social Security programs that we have in place, and without prescription drugs, you can get.
And those are programs that. No, Ms. Mary, thanks for calling too. That's a good point too. Like, for example, about Social Security, that was supposed to be that's supposed to be an investment trust for average citizens, and the government is the steward of that. It protects that trust, and then suddenly to say that, I mean, that's always been a basic question that I've tackled over the years, and I've had to ask about. I mean, I thought this was, if we're paying into it, why suddenly is it going to be insolvent? Why suddenly is the money disappearing? Like, I mean, that's the thing that I don't get about Social Security. I don't claim to be a tax expert, and I don't claim to be an expert on Social Security, but I just thought if you're paying money into it, I thought it, you know, just naturally is supposed to be there. Like, and you, the government, you were supposed to protect it, be a steward of it, let it collect interest. I don't know, and then it's just there sitting there, just like you do with, you make sure that that sort of that sort of operation is available for Wall Street and for regular investors, people who invest and who have sophisticated retirement accounts and can do that. So how come you're not doing that with Social Security? So it's just something that is very interesting. We have to take a break. When we come back on the other side, then we'll go into our weekly EcoWord segment with Eleanor Fort coming up next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word app. We'll be right back.
Brothers and sisters!
Don't miss The Source.
Weekdays 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
on Word Radio.
WordRadio.com and the Word Radio app.
Was that a contraction?
Will I have a private room? Should I deliver with a doctor or a midwife? Can I try for a VBAC?
How much weight should I be gaining? Is there a doctor on site?
Is it time to push?
How am I supposed to fit all of these appointments in? Can I still exercise?
From prenatal care through delivery to postpartum support, including our Level 3 NICU for babies needing extra care. When you have questions, Einstein Maternity Care has answers. Make your appointment at 1-800-EINSTEIN.
Millions plan for retirement online. Estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, and manage your benefits all from the comfort of your home. And give yourself the freedom to do what you want offline. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Independence is a precious thing, but now and then everyone needs a little help. Isn't it good to know that getting the help you need doesn't mean drastically changing your life? Always Best Care Philly and Delaware is there to give you just the amount of help you need, from a few hours a week to as many hours as you need, handling everything from light housekeeping to meals, and so much more. Don't struggle. Contact Always Best Care and see how easy it is to age in place. Call us at 267-909-9248 or visit abcphillybristol.com.
Drive in
with Solomon Jones.
Drive home
with Charles Ellison.
This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM
and 900 AM WURD.
Philadelphia, independent black media.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio
and wordradio.com.
Yeah, welcome back to Reality Check. We're heading into our weekly EcoWord segment here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, the home of Black Talk Media, WURD, wordradio.com, and also by Word app as well. We're joined by Eleanor Fort. She is the Clean Transportation Policy and Advocacy leader or organizer out of Green for All, greenforall.org. For more information, it's an environmental justice advocacy organization, and she's actually based out of Boston. Is that correct, Eleanor? How are you doing?
Yeah, that's right. Great
All right.
to be here.
Good to have you back on. Really appreciate it. I want to continue that discussion about transportation policy and transportation equity. We tend to take transportation for granted. You know, we just take it. We just think that it's something that's just always going to be there, as we had discussed earlier on. And I'm wondering too, do you feel like when you look at the 2020 field, Eleanor, do you feel like that conversation about transportation, the future of transportation, because that's a big discussion and there's a lot of money at stake in that discussion as well, right? But do we feel like that conversation is being fleshed out enough, particularly when we're talking about autonomous driving?
You know, I think that just to, reference the earlier conversation that we had, it is really a new area where people are increasingly focused, transportation equity. And when we talk about transportation equity, we're talking about equity in terms of access, in terms of affordability, how much are people paying to get from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. There are major climate emissions associated with the transportation sector. It's actually the #1 sector for carbon emissions in the U.S., and obviously we know climate is going to hit vulnerable communities the worst, and of course equity when it comes to our public health. And, in terms of the exposure that communities of color are facing disproportionate burdens from tailpipe pollution. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was a study that just came out a few weeks ago that showed that people of color in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic are exposed to 66% more tailpipe pollution, soot, that causes asthma, heart disease, even premature death, they're exposed to 66% more of that pollution than white counterparts. And no, I don't think that the issue is necessarily getting talked about in that way with that framing. But what I do know is that, a number of policymakers, decision makers are increasingly turning their eye towards this. In fact, it is Senator Kamala Harris who is running for president in 2020, but obviously still represents the state of California. She recently introduced a bill that goes straight to the heart of this issue, talking about electric school buses. And so, obviously as she is campaigning to represent the nation, California has experienced a lot of the disproportionate impacts in transportation equity. And this bill would start to address that by making sure that school districts can switch to electric school buses.
Is California a good example or a leading example of how you take, okay, this is the largest state in the country, and I have some personal experience with California, because during the summers I used to visit my dad in Long Beach, just raised in Philly, but we'll go out to Long Beach in California. It's just a totally different world. Different personalities, to say the least, and but also different sets of issues and challenges. And I just remember, just as a kid, driving around or being in the car with my dad or family in California, driving around Southern California. And I remember that smog issue like back in the 80s, right? It was really bad, And so, are we pointing to California as a great example, yes or no, on how a state or how a region recovers from or starts employing best practices in transportation pollution mitigation? So now, like, one thing I noticed, and I was just out in California about a couple of weeks ago in Southern California, and for the first time I took one of the regional rail lines. The trains that wasn't there when I was a kid. Now it's there. Like, there's actual surface trains that go around Southern California. And you see some other things that are very different about transportation. So even though it's still a lot of traffic is bad. It's terrible in Southern California, especially around LA. But is that still a good example for other states and other cities to go by?
I think that California is an example, and we can learn a lot from that and build on it for our communities here on the East Coast and in Philly. I think that because the problem was so bad in California, like you said, in the 70s and 80s, with smog just blanketing the valleys and, traffic causing so much pollution, that I think California really did start to take a much more proactive approach and leverage the work that they could do as a state to address that problem. And sure enough, climate has some very forward-thinking, or California has very forward-thinking climate policy that they have increasingly tried to dedicate additional funds towards programs and technology that make sure that cleaner cars, trucks, and buses are going to the most impacted communities that are, disproportionately exposed to this type of pollution. I think that we can, look to that as an example and continue to learn the lessons of what's worked there and what hasn't worked and what more do we need to do. I think that, the bill that Senator Harris introduced really is meant to see the success that California as a state has had in already switching over to electric school buses. Electric buses have zero tailpipe emission. They're cheaper to fuel and cheaper to maintain. They don't have as many moving parts to break down. But the buses are more expensive right now, so it really requires that policy to help school districts whose budgets are already stretched to overcome that upfront cost. And once they get that support to overcome the upfront cost, then it pays in dividends. The children are safer and healthier. the maintenance costs go down, the fuel costs go down. It cleans up the whole community that buses are driving through. So seeing that success in California and what is possible, I think may have, and again, I can't speak for her, obviously, but I think Senator Harris has seen what is possible in California and wants to introduce this legislation, which is a federal bill, to provide that opportunity for school districts, not just in California, but all across the country, so that they can get, $2 million to cover an increase, to cover the cost of an electric school bus, charging infrastructure, workforce development, job retraining, so that folks know how to work on that school bus. And this is what I think is critical, and why Green for All is so excited about this legislation, is that it actually prioritizes that funding and those investments that the federal government would make to school districts that serve low-income students, and to school districts where it would be replacing the oldest and the dirtiest buses first and foremost. So it is a policy where we're seeing equity kind of, incorporated into that policy in terms of how are we awarding those dollars? How are we choosing which communities get the benefits of cleaner air and healthier children, and making sure that we're starting with the folks who need it the most and the folks who are already disproportionately impacted or vulnerable.
We're talking with Eleanor Fort. She's with Green for All. Go to greenforall.org for more information. She heads up their clean transportation policy and equity projects programs there, greenforall.org. She's based out of Boston, Massachusetts, and she's joining us by phone here on Reality Check. Here's another thing I've always wondered about, Eleanor, too, about how much this issue regarding transportation equity intersects with issues around gentrification. And so it's a big topic, massive topic here in Philadelphia. It's as is it in a lot of major cities. And what I'm noticing is there's obviously with that gentrification that's happening in urban cores, a lot of low-income, working class, moderate income populations being pushed out of the cities into the rings, and so that obviously creates a transportation challenge. It creates a transportation crisis, particularly because people are pushed farther and farther away from transportation, mass transit systems, and they have to rely more and more on cars. Talk about that, how much that intersects with gentrification, and why gentrification is as much a transportation issue as it is a housing issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think transportation and housing are kind of two sides of the same coin, really, because where you live, determines where you're trying to get from to get to anything, your job, school, healthcare. So transportation and housing are really linked together. I think when we talk about rising housing costs in urban centers, gentrification, even if there's a city that has tried to expand transit access, let's say, to a transit desert where there isn't any public transportation, or it's infrequent, or it's unreliable, they might invest money in improving public transit in that neighborhood. And what does that do? A few years later, other folks are realizing, oh, this is a neighborhood where I can get into, work really easily and take public transit. So even expanding public transportation can increase the rate of gentrification for neighborhoods. And it is really critical that we look at housing as part of our transportation planning and make sure that there is adequate, affordable housing, not just at median rates, but that low-income folks can afford around these transit hubs. And to the degree that people are, moving to kind of ex-urban areas, might be city centers around a community. For instance, in Boston, we have communities like Brockton, like Lowell, like Lawrence. These are 45 minutes outside of our city. They are cities in and of themselves, but but, housing is cheaper there. What we really need is to focus on making sure that as folks move to those areas, that we're still connecting them to the jobs and the health services and the educational opportunities within our major urban cores. So I think it's a combination of expanding public transportation, especially for the ex-urban areas where folks might have moved because of cheaper housing, to make sure that they can still get into jobs, and also expanding the transportation within that core, and doing so when you know that putting in that new train line or putting in that new bus line might increase housing costs. Then you've got to couple that with investments in affordable housing as well, and even protecting renters from, rent increases that might go along with improved access.
Also, Eleanor, are policyholders, are you seeing that they're much more aware of that? They're becoming much more aware, and so do we see those decisions now starting to take place? Because that is interesting. Like, I never thought about that. I never thought about it that way, that as you expand mass transit, you just automatically think, oh, that's more access for people. But that actually becomes an amenity. The more the regional rail or subway stops become economic hubs, they become attractions or sources of attraction for different areas wherever they move into. That's why sometimes but I guess I do worry sometimes when you create a subway stop and then suddenly you're building all these shops and office buildings and everything else around it. But that's true, you're not seeing the affordable housing. So are folks especially on the state and local level, are they aware of that? Are they starting to change their thinking and planning? What are some of the trends that you're seeing with respect to that?
Yeah, I do think that, a few decades ago, the kind of main thrust for development was more kind of, suburban sprawl, and that obviously is creates a landscape where people really do rely on their cars. And I think that we're starting to see a shift back. People are moving back into urban centers. People want public transit access. And so I do think that what is gaining traction with policymakers, with decision makers, particularly at the local level, and if it's not gaining traction in your community, then it should be, is transit-oriented development and transit-oriented affordable housing. Because again, if people have access to jobs, that is a key stepping stool to lift a family out of poverty or a worker out of poverty, to have the access to the job. So, it's great if you create affordable housing, but if it's in a place where nobody can get a job from that neighborhood, then, it has to have access to other opportunities that help people move forward in life and have that social mobility as well. I think for transit-oriented development, what we often see is, a new bus stop or a new train stop comes into the community, and all of a sudden you see these, businesses and fancy coffee shops and luxury condos going up all around. Again, I'm based in Boston. I live right near the Ashmont stop on the Red Line, which is in a diverse neighborhood called Dorchester, and they just did a major station upgrade a few years ago, and we're already seeing, luxury condos being built all around the station. I'm sure that the same thing is happening in Philadelphia. It's happening all across the country. I think that it's really important for local decision makers to understand that as they put in those improvements, and as they, increase the attractiveness of amenities like transit, that they couple that with requirements that if you're going to develop in this area, you must develop, for low-income housing. There has to be a percentage of the housing that is dedicated, that is going to be affordable, and again, not just at, the kind of median rate of average, but truly affordable, for working class families minimum wage earners in that city, in that neighborhood.
We've been talking with Eleanor Fort of Green for All. She's a transportation equity expert based in Boston, Massachusetts, and running the transportation equity policy project for Green for All, greenforall.org for more information. At Ride with Eleanor on social media if you'd like to learn more about her research and some of her conversation, and also interface with her there. She's been joining us here on Reality Check. Eleanor, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Take care. Thank you. All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back on the other side, we're supposed to be talking with Frank Biden about Florida sugar producers. There's this new class action lawsuit against the Florida sugar industry for toxic sugarcane burnings that's been affecting black communities in the Florida Everglades for quite a long time. So there's a big mass class action lawsuit over that in Florida. So we're going to talk with Frank Biden coming up next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word app. We'll be right back.
Now, a traffic update on Word Radio.
Some big delays on the Philly roads. This traffic report, it's sponsored by SOS Children's Villages. We have closures around the Ben Franklin Parkway, also around Independence Mall as they get ready for 4th of July festivities, so expect detours. Schuylkill Expressway, 76 westbound, it is crawling from University to the Vine Expressway. Then your Jam City to Belmont, and again 476 to 202. Eastbound Schuylkill, that's stop and go 476 to Belmont, then Montgomery down to the Vine Expressway. On the Vine Expressway, eastbound your Jam 76 to 95, westbound Jams Broad Street back to the Schuylkill Expressway. 95 northbound, stop and go 452 to the Commodore Barry Bridge. Again, Penn's Landing to Girard. South on 95, that jams 420 into the Commodore Barry Bridge. Blue Route southbound, it's heavy in pockets anywhere from St. David's all the way down to I-95. And the Boulevard northbound jams the Schuylkill Expressway into Broad Street. Walt Whitman Bridge eastbound is crawling into Jersey all the way from about Broad Street in Pennsylvania across the bridge into Jersey. That's because 42 southbound crawls from the Walt Whitman Bridge down to 295. Stop and go on 295 southbound from 73 down to 42. 676 southbound, that is jamming from Atlantic Avenue down to the 42 freeway. War, poverty, and disaster have left millions of children around the world orphaned, abandoned, alone. When their parents can't be there, SOS Children's Villages is there in 134 countries, including the U.S. To make a difference in a child's life, go to sosusa.org. For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Brendan Joseph with your Philadelphia area traffic.
What's up, everyone? I know you know the word. No, not the station, but the word. J-O-B, that is. And our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious breads in our community for over 100 years, and they want you to join their team today. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they're hiring right now. Check it out. They offer fair pay and provide health, dental, and prescription plans after 90 days of employment. Call Scott Drummond at 856-754-0360 or visit amorosos.com for details.
Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM, WURD.
Attention Word audience, do you know that you can get help with your PECO energy bill? PECO is here to help you with financial help through various assistance programs, including the PECO CAP program, which provides a monthly credit for eligible low-income customers based on the customer's total household gross income and energy usage. If you are experiencing financial hardship, you may qualify for the PECO CAP program.
And PECO Cares is the customer assistance and referral evaluation service designed to assist special needs, low-income customers who have a temporary personal or financial hardship that prevents the payment of your PECO energy bill. If you have a special needs child or adult in your care, your household may qualify for the CARES program.
Call 1-800-774-7040 today to see if you qualify due to an existing situation or a change in circumstances within your household. Call 1-800-774-7040 today for more information on the PECO CAP or PECO Cares program. PECO, powering our communities.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We're kind of extending our Eco Word segment here on the home of Black Talk Media. It's 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word app, especially if you're listening beyond the greater Philadelphia area. You can tune in to our live stream. You can download it on your smartphone or your tablet device. It's downloaded on your Apple Store, your Google Play Store. At Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check on Twitter if you'd like to join in for the social media conversation or join in on this conversation if you prefer doing that on social media in the Twitter verse as opposed to calling in. We'll definitely read your tweets out on air if you have questions as well for some of our guests who are on here talking about a wide range of issues, including Frank Biden. Frank Biden is joining us. He's also, he happens to be the younger brother of former Vice President and now Democratic presidential frontrunner Joe Biden. But he, more importantly, is involved in a massive class action lawsuit against the Florida sugar industry, and a big industry it is. And they're being sued over toxic sugarcane burnings. And actually, this lawsuit is one of the bigger environmental justice, anti-environmental racism cases that is in effect right now. In fact, Mr. Biden has been teaming up with former NFL great Fred Taylor, who grew up in some of the affected areas that have been polluted, tainted by toxic sugarcane burnings. Fred Taylor grew up in the Florida Everglades and has been talking about the plight of those predominantly black communities for years. And so we have Frank Biden here joining us to talk about that class action lawsuit and why this is such an important topic. Mr. Biden, how are you doing, sir?
Never better. How are you, sir?
All right, good. Yeah, thank you for this. Thank you for joining us. And talk about how bad is this toxic sugarcane burnings, because it sounds so innocuous, right? It sounds like, well, sugarcane, like, why is that? You know, one, people in Philly will be like, well, what does that have to do with me? And then two, you don't think of sugar as something, I mean, beyond your health, you don't think of it as an environmental threat.
Well, it is most certainly an environmental threat at the very least. Imagine this. Imagine on afternoons when your kids are in school in an isolated area, and you look up into the sky, and what's coming down is black fallout that covers cars, covers the entire area. It's in the air you breathe. It is exactly like fallout. During the school year, I probably need to say more than this. During elementary school, every year during the regular school year, they have to bring in oxygen tanks for kids to breathe. They don't let them out at recess because of the fallout.
Wow.
It's evident when you go into the community at Pahokee or Belglade or Clewiston. You walk into a diner or a restaurant, and it's very normal to see little babies on respirators. The level of damage, we are just beginning to plumb. We've been at this now for 18 months, as you said, with the help of Fred, who brought it to the attention of many. The law firm of Berman & Berman is leading this class action. The suit was filed federally. We've also filed a state suit and a mass tort action that has also begun. It's really unconscionable. It's not unlike the kind of situation that we have going on in the detention camps down on our border.
Yeah.
If it were, I mean, just to put it starkly, I mean, we Bidens can't say anything, but sometimes we put our foot in our mouth, but we speak the truth here, and I speak the truth when I say very simply that it simply wouldn't be tolerated if it were in a middle class, upper class community. You just on the face of it wouldn't be tolerated.
How many people are we talking about impacted?
We're talking about 40,000 people. There'll be 30,000 people in the class, and there'll be thousands in the mass tort action. Now, here's the defense. The defense is, well, they've been monitoring the air quality in Palm Beach County for years, and the air quality in Palm Beach County is just fine, quote unquote. Well, what we're talking about here is a corner way out west in Palm Beach County. And ironically, they only burn the cane when the wind is blowing toward the black community. If it were to blow toward West Palm Beach and the affluent communities of Wellington, it simply would not be tolerated.
No, they would shut it down.
They'd shut it down. Now, look, here's the other thing. here in the United States, we supposedly have the most advanced agri-industry on the planet.
Right.
And now remember, these guys, the Big Sugar is has a subsidy of somewhere north of $2 billion just in this area, and it is supposed to be on the cutting edge of agri-industry in terms of methods, reduced pesticides, everything you would think of that would be just good business, right?
Right.
Well, in Dominica, in Brazil, they don't burn cane anymore.
Okay.
They only burn it here in the U.S.
So we're the only place that's left that's doing this.
Right. We're back in the 19th century, and quote unquote, third world countries are in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And it's all about the dollar. It's all about a buck.
Yeah. And you can see that video too. You provide that video like of a sugarcane burning, showing like the black snow, for example, that falls down. That's on YouTube. You can definitely find that under class action filed against Big Sugar on YouTube, and it's a fascinating video to watch and to see kind of how this pollution is taking place. I'm real curious too. So you have 40,000 people impacted there in that community. Do people who are impacted in terms of their health, but are they also reliant? You were saying it's a big industry down there, but are they at the same time reliant on that industry for employment?
Yes. The answer is yes. So we're not about the business of shutting down Big Sugar. We're just asking Big Sugar to use modern practices to make up for the deficiencies in health that have been created, and to stop burning the cane. Period. End of story.
Yeah.
So, this is a soluble problem. This will in no way, shape, or form cripple Big Sugar. This is Big Sugar stepping up to the plate, taking responsibility, acting as the good neighbor that they say they are. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt to step up to the plate. Nobody's called them to task on this issue.
Yeah.
So we're doing that with the voice of the community behind us, and increasingly the word's getting out to community activists and people who have a deep interest in social justice. I don't want to sound like I am the leader of the band here. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm a happy follower here, and adding my voice and the voice of many of my contemporaries to this issue.
Got it.
It's people like Fred Taylor and others who are the heroes.
How did you get involved with this? How did you find out about it?
I've been involved in the Palm Beach County community for some time now, over 10 years. I'm a resident down here. I live in Boynton Beach, Florida.
Okay, I know where that is.
Have my address on the phone.
Right.
Get in trouble. Right.
Right.
But and I've got from some real good friends, from Elsie Hastings to Senator Abruzzo, who represented that area for a very long time, and I'm involved at the grassroots level of politics as it affects our most vulnerable communities here, and have been for a while, in areas of education and certainly in and around the environment. And this was brought to my attention. I joined the firm about 18 months ago. I'm semi-retired, and I have the luxury of getting to do what I want to do now at my advanced age. I'm in my early 60s, and my interests have always been in and around issues involving the environment and education. So I brought it to the attention of the partners, and Senator Abruzzo added his voice. Fred, we got a hold of Fred. Fred and I became friends, and we just decided to pick up the stick, and we had the dough to put the money behind this suit, and let's have at it. Hold these folks to account.
Right, and so if they don't burn what would be the alternative, right? Okay, so U.S. is the only place that's doing this.
Well,
what would be the alternative method?
There's a method of cut and gathering,
okay,
mechanized. Let me put it that way. I won't go into the engineering principles involved,
okay,
but it's much more efficient, and it doesn't pollute anything.
Right, and you could potentially use that waste. You could somehow, I don't
Correct.
know, use it into a renewable energy source. I don't know.
Sure, there's a thing called thin fuel that can be made from the cane.
Right.
So
maybe
there's a host of great alternatives. I mean, as a business model, burning cane doesn't make any sense.
That was my next question. Yeah, like, so what's the business case, right? Like, maybe are they doing this because it's cheaper? But like, and maybe just setting out that business case to, do that cost benefit analysis and show that, hey, well, you burning cane, actually, you're hemorrhaging a little money there. Well, we have something where not only do you get rid of the dead sugar cane, but you can also make some more money off this.
Yes. Well, it's a lot like the rest of our renewable energy outlook here in the U.S., certainly under this administration. And now I don't want to drift too far into that area of politics. But again, on the face of it, we know that renewable energy, wind, geothermal, solar, offers a huge economic opportunity. It's the next energy revolution in the U.S., and yet we are reticent to move in that direction because we have the atavistic forces who are still at work, who are very content with the status quo. Even though all this opportunity is on the horizon in terms of economic opportunity and jobs and training for jobs of the 21st century, we are stuck in a position where the levers of power are still held by those interests that benefit greatly by the current status quo. Same thing holds true with big sugar.
You know what? I'm real curious too. And once again, we're talking with Frank Biden. Frank Biden. He's actually teamed up with former NFL player, legend Fred Taylor, on a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit against the Florida sugar industry for toxic sugarcane burnings. And apparently, I did not know this until just a few moments ago, the U.S., the only place where they're still burning sugarcane. Everywhere else in the world, they're not doing that, but they are doing it in the U.S., and particularly in the Florida Everglades, where about 40,000 people are impacted. And in the Belle Glades section, the much more vulnerable, socioeconomically distressed sections of Palm Beach County. And so he's joining us here on Reality Check. I'm curious, speaking of the Florida sugar industry, what about I noticed the governor of Florida, who people didn't expect this from him when he got elected, Governor DeSantis, he's started putting a big focus, and he's actually made investments in the state budget towards environmental remediation and protecting the Everglades. So where is he on this?
Kudos to him. He is not engaged at this point in time.
Okay.
There has been blowback from the local officials, the local, quote, governmental sources. Again, there was an editorial today in our local paper here, the Palm Beach Post, saying, in fact, that air quality is good in Palm Beach County. No one's disputing air quality is good in Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County is a big, big place.
Yeah,
it's the size of Philadelphia County and Chester County put together. Right, I'm from up home, Wilmington, Delaware. I mean, Philly is all the Philly teams are my teams, man.
Of course.
I'm a Philly guy.
We'd expect that, right?
Wilmington, Delaware. When I was a kid, we drove 28 miles up the road to Philadelphia.
There you go. You better be right.
Yeah. So it's a big, big area.
Right.
And it is not in dispute that air quality is okay in Palm Beach County. What is in dispute, and what is actually not in dispute, which on the face of it is obvious to anyone with two eyes and has a sense of smell and taste and touch, that when that cane is burned, there is a deleterious effect to your respiratory system.
Yeah.
Black, white, brown, whomever you are, you don't want to breathe that air. Now, in addition, this is a little putting a little bit out there. Maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse. We've also discovered clusters of cancer in and around the Clewiston area. So, there are additional problems related to the burning and the soil runoff, that there are carcinogens that are leached from the cane burning that are obviously, they use pesticides out there, and they're supposed to be okay.
Right.
But who in the hell knows exactly what happens to the chemistry of those substances when they're burned, they're put in the air, and we breathe them, or that they leach into our drinking water, or they leach into our water system. It just it is we're just discovering multifarious problems that are the result of what I would call 19th century farming methods. And again, remember, we subsidize, the American taxpayer, we subsidize the sugar industry out there to the tune of $2 billion.
Yeah, we've been talking with Frank Biden. He's also advising or consulting the Florida law firm of Berman Law Group as they move forward with this class action lawsuit against the Florida sugar industry for toxic sugar cane burning. Definitely want to keep in touch with you on this, Frank, to see where you go with this, where this heads, and wondering if it could be a model for other places, other jurisdictions. Obviously, with Philly's dealing with its own air pollution, air quality issues that are very front and center right now, and we've been talking about that quite a bit on this program and others. So it'd be great to get an update from you at some later point, and maybe I'm in Florida from time to time. Maybe when I'm there, I'll I can see that, see some of the stuff that's happening on the ground, because it's very fascinating.
To introduce you to some of my friends out in Pahokee and Belgrade. I got a lot of them, and I'm sure they're pleased to talk to you and see you.
Excellent, excellent.
More voices that are echoing, at the very least, that there is a problem and that we need to pay attention. These folks have no voice. They're dispossessed. They're the poorest folk in Palm Beach County.
Yeah.
And they're the hardest working. They're a terrific community, and they deserve our attention. They deserve our support. And it's folks like you and your listeners that we count on to provide that support.
All right. Frank Biden joining us here on Reality Check, and I'm sure we'll be talking with him again. The very best to you on that. Good luck to you on that case, and we'll be getting an update from you soon. We'll be in touch.
Good. Happy 4th to everybody at home.
All right. Same to you. Take care. All right. We're going to take a very quick break here on Reality Check, home of Black Talk Media, WRD, and the phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Now, a traffic update on Word Radio.
Lots of delays on the Philly roads. This traffic report is sponsored by Think It Up. You'll see closures on the Ben Franklin Parkway, also some closures around Independence Mall. They're getting set up for the 4th of July festivities in the city, so expect detours. Schuylkill Expressway, eastbound jamming 476 to Belmont, to Montgomery to the Vine, westbound Schuylkill, crawling from University up to the Vine worth a crash on the shoulder. Then you are jammed as you head from about the Vine Expressway to Montgomery, and heavy as you head from Gladwin out to Conshohocken. On the Vine Expressway eastbound, it's heavy 76 across the 95, westbound the Ben Franklin Parkway to the Schuylkill Merge. 95 northbound, that is jammed from Penn's Landing to Girard. Southbound 95, that jams the airport to 420. A disabled truck blocks the center lane. Then you're jammed Ridley Park to the Commodore Barry Bridge. Blue Route southbound, heavy in pockets anywhere from St. David's down to I-95. Boulevard northbound slows the Schuylkill Expressway into Broad Street. On the bridges, Walt Whitman Bridge eastbound jams into Jersey. That's because 42 southbound jams from the Walt Whitman Bridge down to 295. Stop and go on 676 southbound Atlantic Avenue down to 42. And on 295 southbound, it's heavy from Haddonfield Berlin Road down to the 42 freeway.
Hi, I'm Nick Jonas, and I'm here to tell you about Think It Up, a new initiative to activate student-powered, teacher-led learning projects. Students and teachers, how can you spark great learning experiences in your classrooms today? Join us at thinkitup.org.
For more traffic information, log on to SIGAlert.com. I'm Brendan Joseph with Philadelphia Area Traffic.
Get your money straight.
Get my money right.
With Solomon Jones and Akbar Hassan.
Fridays on Wake Up with Word.
7 a.m. till 10 a.m. Hosted by Solomon Jones. Exclusively on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
It's time to start cracking it, cooking it, toasting it, Canadian bacon in it, stacking it. In other words, putting a freshly cracked grade A egg into every Egg McMuffin so you can start Independence hauling it, waterfronting it, and love parking it. We get cracking so you can too. For a limited time, get our famous Egg McMuffin or Sausage McMuffin with egg for just $2 each. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Offer valid until September 1st.
Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation?
Follow us on social media
using the hashtag onWURD.
Be heard.
Stay connected to Word Radio.
Independent Black Media. Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio
and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. 866-361-0900. It's 215-634-8065. 866-361-0900. Let's go to Eric in West Philly, who's calling in for a reality check. Eric, how are you doing, sir?
Fine, yourself. Now, the interview you just had,
right?
I was going on that line, but you know, it's surprising to find that out. But I'm not surprised for real because
right.
Months back on the Al Sharpton show with Mary Pat Hector about, I think, in Louisiana,
yeah,
a black community down there is like they diverted water pipes from them and ran it miles, hundreds of miles in a different direction to a white community.
Right.
So, I mean, we have these cases going on every day, it seems like.
It is.
But see, when we don't stand together and fight together, these things continue to happen because, you know, I've read up on, I was going to bring up the Passyunk homes. They demolished them homes a couple of years back, and I knew about that because that's when Solomon Jones was on before he left and came back. But the thing about that, I've read the article like last week and found out that them homes was built on an oil tank or a gas tank, and the tank was leaking. And a lot of people when them Passyunk homes was coming up with cancer and all types of illness. And actually another reverend, I think it's Holston, had a show. He had a show on Fridays around 5. He was talking about when he was living in Eastwick, how his daughter had asthma, and he moved, and then it went away. So when you talking about up there in nice town with this pop with Scepter,
right?
That's why I be like, what is the community doing? You know,
right?
Sick, cancer, all these different illnesses. And it's like they suffering in silence because it's like if I'm going through something, I'm going to the doctor, and the doctor not help me. I'm going to the news. I'm going to call people. I mean, if you're not saying nothing to nobody, how are we going to ever know what's going on? And this is the whole reason why I listen and why I like to, you know, get involved because these things going on. But like you say, that sugarcane thing, I read that article just when he brought it up, and the part I read was 9 million tons of foliage burned and over 400,000 acres.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
which is
ridiculous.
It's stupid.
That's right. I mean, then when he said they only burn it when the wind is blowing in a certain direction.
That's just trifling, right? That's cruel.
You know what?
That's cruel and unusual punishment. Like that's just spiteful. Like, okay, well, the wind blew. Yeah, we were actually just in between break. Troy and I were talking about that. We were just.
It's not far fetched because these things go on all the time. So
right.
It's like if we come together and just start bringing these issues up and pointing them out. I mean, it's like these things going and they coming up, but there's so much stuff going on. I mean, come on, this stuff is ridiculous. I mean, white people live right down there by that oil refinery. Why they not getting sick?
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Why are they not getting sick? Why? Because the majority of folks that have been surveyed that are dealing with those issues are black and are moderately income, low to moderate income.
No, but I'm trying to understand.
Right.
Why is only certain people getting sick? And
yeah.
It's like
It's a good question.
Apartment buildings, because I've been driving people around the city for a long time. And I know white people live all around that refinery.
That's right.
But why is only certain people getting sick?
It's a good question.
Something's going on that you know what I mean? That's why when I called you months before, I said something sinister is really going on.
Yeah.
Because, you know what I mean, the way it's going down is like, how can these things be happening? You know, we know about the stuff that's in our face and all that stuff, but just hitting stuff, you know, when you start hearing these stories, it's ridiculous. But I ain't going to hold you up, man.
No, you did not holding us up. And you know what, real quick, too, Eric, we missed an opportunity, and even I feel like I missed an opportunity as well, like during this past primary, the election here in Philly. That should have been a top 3 topic. That should to rally people up to really light fire under candidates, and particularly the candidate who ended up getting reelected as mayor. Like, why are you expanding natural gas infrastructure in the city? Why are you allowing that septic gas plant to be built in Nice? That's the last place it needs to be built. With
because they can't.
You know, yeah, but you know, it's like when we're not lighting them up about it, and you're right, it's like the stuff that's not in front of our face, because a lot of it's insidious and it's invisible, but it's acting.
We under attack for so many different angles. That's why I'd be like, we need to be engaged, community by community, block by block. And when I go out and try to talk to my neighbors and see they're not engaged, I understand why it goes on. Because some people just don't care.
They don't care. They don't know. People don't know.
Like, we fight with the people that we can fight with. Others, we just leave them alone.
Right.
I ain't going to blame them for not getting involved, because they might be doing something I don't know about.
Right.
But, you know what I mean, just to be talking about and try to find a way to engage yourself and myself, really, that's why, I listen to y'all and all this type stuff, and I try to get involved, at least talk to my neighbors, but a lot of them just seem like they don't even care.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a breaking the wheels or something. I don't know.
Right. Man. People don't care. And a lot of people just don't know. And it's up to us. It's up to vehicles like this, like what we do here on WRD, what we do on Reality Check, to let people know. And that's why we're making noise around the oil refinery situation.
Well, we can keep the fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm down with y'all. So I'm gonna
we appreciate that.
You have a good weekend.
All right, you do the same. Yeah, you be safe out there. Have a good one. Phone lines are still open at 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. And I appreciate Eric raising that, and it's absolutely true. Once again, it goes back to what we always say here, that we're on the front lines of not just these discussions, but these conditions, these things that are happening. And you have to wonder, why is it that we're being disproportionately impacted by that kind of pollution, that type of pollution, that level of pollution. And it's going on everywhere. It's going on in Philly. It's going on, as you heard, in Florida, in the Everglades. You got tens of thousands of impacted folks that look like you and I, impacted, and their children. And they're elderly people. Also, places like Louisiana, like what Eric was just describing, is everywhere. We're the ones that are in. It's so bad. The NAACP did a whole report on that kind of pollution and how pollution, particularly from sources, toxic sources like refineries, et cetera, and they deliberately, not only do they deliberately do certain things or manage waste or manage those energy sources or what have you in such a way that it negatively impacts black communities, but they also build certain places, certain facilities deliberately on distress, but because they feel like, well, they're powerless. And so then it goes back to that conversation. Like, I was listening, after I jumped off, was listening to Reverend Al Sharpton on Keeping It Real, and he was talking about gerrymandering and how that's a real threat. That's something, you're really, one, and I like the way he framed it. I didn't think about it that way, but I see it unfolding after years in politics and watching it and being engaged in it closely. But, how they use gerrymandering is to essentially pack us all in residential cages. And then when you're packing us all in these residential or geographical cages, because that's what it really is. That's what gerrymandering is. I mean, it's geographical caging. Just putting just the same way, they would just, they would, with our ancestors, they would pack us up, round them up, in like cattle. And so they're doing the same thing with gerrymandering. And then you push us into these geographic cages, and then you make us politically impotent, politically powerless. And then so we're so politically powerless that it allows certain forces, certain industries to build those kinds of facilities, those kinds of pollution sources. And then we can't do anything about it because then we're politically toothless because of how they, so it's all that stuff's interrelated, and there's a domino effect that happens, from the cradle of that kind of sinister political operation, or that sinister political planning and strategy, to outcomes, bad public health outcomes, like what we're dealing with right here in Philly with the PES oil refinery, like what Eric just described. I'm glad for him mentioning it, because we can't let go of the near finished SEPTA gas plant. And just wondering about the impact that's going to have on that Nicetown community and other communities up there in North Philly, or the PGW natural gas plant. And so that's all part of that discussion. And so now it's taking shape. It's crystallizing that this is not just some random or obscure issue that's popping up in Philly. This is very real. And then at the same time, right, then they want to shut down a hospital and want to make it seem like you don't need the hospital. Oh, you got enough hospitals. It's like, okay, while you're expanding this toxic climate or these toxic conditions in the city, which are going to make people sicker, which forces them to rely more on a public health infrastructure, it's like you're going to shut a hospital down. It makes no sense. Like this, when you start thinking about it and you start piecing it together, you're like, this is madness. It's madness. It's madness the way some city leaders are treating it. Some state leaders and federal leaders as well are treating it and acting like that problem doesn't exist. Like nothing to see here, just putting like yellow police tape around it and like nothing to see here, just keep on moving. Like, it's that bad. It is that bad. And so like it's time to like put a light on it and really light folks up on this and make sure that they're addressing it. So I understand that there are economic considerations, but it doesn't work out in terms of the business model dimensions of it. It doesn't work out well for the industries either. And look at PES. They can talk about that, because that explosion was pretty much a result of their neglect. So it's not, didn't work out for you, did it, PES, right? And or in the case of this the sugarcane industry in Florida, you could actually make more money by not burning the sugarcane. You just heard Frank Biden say that. So how, as my grandmother used to say, how bass-ackwards is that? You're right. It's just bass-ackwards. It really is. Like, you can actually make more money. So it's like, okay, you don't care about the morality of it all. You don't care about people's lives and the impact. Okay, I get that. But just pure business sense, it makes no business sense. It's just an all-around unsustainable business model, and it's an unsustainable growth model for a city like a major Eastern Seaboard city like a Philadelphia. You want Philadelphia to grow, but then you want to pollute it like that? It makes absolutely no, it's absolute. I'm here to tell you, and I'm trying to tell you this in the simplest terms I can possibly tell you. It is absolute lunacy. And also it is a driver for a lot of other problems that we're seeing. We wonder, homicide rates going up, and we're wondering like, what's going on? Like, yeah, people absolutely, pollution, part of the reason certain things go unaddressed or people going mad like that in Philly is because of that pollution over generations and generations of time. It affects people's health. It affects their mental health. It affects their neurological development. They're worrying now about the long-term public safety effects of that Flint water crisis up in Flint, Michigan. So much lead in the water, and the young people, the children in Flint, the tens of thousands of children in Flint have been so exposed and harmed by that lead poisoning in Flint, Michigan, that they're wondering, what type of adults are they going to grow up to be? It's going to be a strain on the public safety criminal justice system up there in Flint, Michigan, and Michigan elsewhere. because of the damage that it's doing to their brain. So we got lead problems down here too, and kids sitting up in toxic schools. Wonder what's going to happen to them. Like, you got to wonder, like, what kind of future is Philly going to have? What kind of future does Philly want? All that stuff, it's all related. This is not obscure stuff. This is real. This is alarming. And so let's continue to talk about and put pressure on the folks who need to have pressure brought on them. Let's take a quick break. We're coming back to head into our weekly vital signs segment. We're actually going to be joined by Dr. Owen Garrick of Bridge Clinical Research, talking about a recent study that he did regarding the linkage between the diversity in the medical profession and also reducing mortality rates among black patients. The benefits of having, essentially diverse doctors or black doctors in healthcare institutions. So it's a clinical trial that they did in recent months. So we're going to talk about that here on Vital Signs on Reality Check, coming up next on the home of Black Talk Media, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word app. We'll be right back.
Listen to Word Radio on the go with the Word Radio app. Search for WURD in your favorite app store today and take us with you wherever you go. Stay connected to Word Radio, independent black media.
Hi, everybody. This is Nick inviting you to buy your next car from Jerry and the fellows over at Cardex. See, they're not dealers. They're like a car concierge service. They design a car around you. Almost any make. If it's not on the lot, they'll go out and get it for you. So use my car concierge, where I've already bought 4 cars. Cardex at 116 East Glenside Avenue in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Check them out online at cardexinc.com or call Cardex at 215-886-3230.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Lifting every voice
till earth and heaven ring.
This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Black Talk Media.
Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word app. If you're listening in beyond the greater Philadelphia, Delaware Valley area, you can also reach us by social media at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check. But don't forget, go to @onWURD, hashtag one. We want to keep track of the program and keep track of the conversations that are refreshed here daily on the home of Black Talk Media. And you can also continue to join in to the conversation through social media at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check. And we're heading into our weekly Vital Signs segment, which is brought to you by Moravia Health. Go to moraviahealth.com for more information. And joining us now is Owen Garrick. He's president, COO of Bridge Clinical Research, is based in Oakland. Also, he's a co-author of a study that was done actually last summer, but it was updated in about a month or so ago. And the title of that report was done for the National Bureau of Economic Research is Does Diversity Matter for Health? Experimental evidence from Oakland. And he's here to talk more about that, joining us here on Reality Check. Dr. Garrick, how are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Excellent, excellent. So how did you conduct this study? What did you focus on here? You were focusing primarily on, you looked at a particular medical institution, a set of medical institutions, and you saw how diversity really does matter. It radically alters outcomes in a very positive way when you have doctors of color, when you have black and brown doctors servicing black and brown patients or diverse patients. Talk about some of the methods that you went through to come to some of these conclusions.
Yeah, and that really is the punchline. So we focused on black men. We recruited about a little over 1,300 black men from mainly barbershops in the greater Oakland area. So I guess now, or soon to be former home of the Golden State Warriors. They're moving over to San Francisco in a few months.
Right.
So 1,300 subjects from, black barbershops, and a black bar. I used to live in Philadelphia, so I can say this pretty confidently. A black barbershop in Oakland is pretty similar to a black barbershop in Philadelphia.
That's right.
So
that's the case everywhere.
Some will be, some will be small, some will be bigger, some will be nicer, but generally you have black men, conversation, comfort, right, a home sort of family environment. And that is why we decided to recruit from those places, because if you're a black guy, generally, if you have hair, you go to the barbershop, usually a black barbershop every 1 to 2, 3 weeks.
Right.
So great source of recruitment, and certainly for the population that we were looking at. And so the study was evaluating whether or not a black versus, and I want to say non-black pretty clearly. For us, that meant that non-black physician could have been white or Asian, and in our case, it was either Chinese or East Asian descent. And the question was, will black doctors, are they better able to increase uptake of preventative services? So did they better convince their black male patients to do things like get their blood pressure taken, get a flu vaccine, get a cholesterol screening, get a diabetes screening, that sort of stuff. And it wasn't that there was an intent to do that. You actually had to show up to a clinic that we set up and get these services done or not done. So the way we set it up was, we recruited at the barbershop, did a basic survey, and for completing that survey, you got your haircut paid for. And then you were afforded the opportunity to come to this clinic that we had set up, and we had on most days 6 doctors in total, 3 black and 3 non-black doctors, and you were randomly assigned to either the black group or the non-black group as a patient or research subject. And then it was there that the black doctor or non-black doctors had conversations with you about these all recommended services. So every year you should, and maybe more than every year, depending on what your disease or how healthy you are, you should get your blood pressure taken, your cholesterol screening, your diabetes screening, flu vaccine is recommended annually. And the way we set it up was when you first came in, you saw a picture of your doctor, and that was either a black doctor or, like I said, a non-black doctor.
Okay.
And you decided what of these services, the 6 services we were offering, you were going to take. And then the doctor actually came in, and his job, and these are all men in this case, his job was to talk to you and recommend and see if you would do all of them.
Right.
And what we found was that the black doctors were much better at convincing the black patients to take more services. So as an example, there was an almost 70-75% difference in how better the black doctors did in terms of getting patients to take their cholesterol screening. Right, and that's dramatic. Right?
That is dramatic.
That's anything, any 70% increase in anything in life, I think, is dramatic.
Right.
And that's not to say that the non-black doctors didn't do a good job. it was that the black doctors just did an exceedingly great job at getting patients or research subjects to increase these preventative services.
Do we, okay, so what's going on there? I mean, is it a matter of the black doctors just being a bit better than their non-black peers at selling these types of services, or selling the need for preventive services or preventive action? Or is it something that's going on, there's just psychological triggers psychosocial triggers that you recognize from that sample of black men who were coming from the barbershops and they were being exposed to random clusters of black doctors and non-black doctors?
So that is the great question, right? Mm-hmm. So we looked at, I'll jump to the conclusion. We concluded that it was really about better communication between the black doctors and the black male research subjects or patients. And I'll be brief in terms of how we got to that. So the other factors we looked at were whether or not the black doctors were just working harder or they were putting more effort in. We looked at whether or not there were quality differences. So you mentioned, are they better? Did we just have the more qualified, funniest, best engaged black doctors and the the non-black doctors that were just boring and barely graduated from medical school? Right. So that was the quality issue. And then the third thing was, or the fourth thing was, whether or not there was some sort of discrimination going on behalf of the non-black doctors to the black patients, or was there some amount of reverse racism going on that patients preferred, white versus, or I say non-black versus black. So, I'll very quickly tick on this, why we thought these three were not the issue. When we looked at effort, so are the black doctors working harder, we evaluated the amount of time that the doctors spent with the research subject. So this modeled a real-life exam setting. So there was an actual exam room. The doctors were there with the patient. So we weren't I was at the clinic most Saturdays when it was open. So we weren't in the room. Mm-hmm. So in that, that's typically when you go to your doctor, you're in the room with your doctor, and maybe there's some sort of scribe, but typically there's, that doctor-patient interaction. So we did find that the black doctors were spending more time on average, but that was a function of they were getting them to do more services. So if you did the flu vaccine, you had to get consented to do the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine was in a different room, so you had to leave the exam room, get the flu vaccine, come back. Getting your height and weight done, you got on the scale, you had to give a little blood in terms of the diabetes and cholesterol screening. So the more of that you did, the more time it took. Right. Once we controlled for the number of services, we found that the black versus non-black doctors were spending generally the same amount of time. Got it. So we concluded it wasn't effort. Then when we looked at this issue of discrimination, we found that the black patients rated the non-black and black doctors the same. They were all rated like 4.8, 4.9 out of 5. Yeah. So very high rating. So they certainly didn't feel discriminated against. Okay. And that was equal. And then the third thing was quality, right? So we looked at medical school. We gave all the doctors a medical school ranking. We gave the doctors this mini board exam, and if anything, the black doctors were at slightly lower ranked medical school, or came from slightly lower ranked. And when I say slightly, we're talking everyone was in the top 25. Right. So maybe, the black doctors skewed more toward the bottom of the top 25 versus the top of the top 25. But we didn't see that as meaningful. Mm-hmm. And then similarly, they scored equally on this practice board exam. And like I mentioned, there was this quality rating of generally the same from the research subjects. Got it. So that made us conclude there was no quality difference. So no quality difference, no issue around discrimination, and similar amount of effort. Then we looked at communication. And like I said, we weren't taping these interactions. But what we did afford both the patients as well as the doctors, they could write notes.
Right.
So just like you go to your doctor and he or she writes a note about the visit, what you're going to do next, what you're dealing with, etc. And you might also get a survey afterwards. So the black doctors wrote many more notes on their patients or research subjects, and they wrote notes about non-medical issues.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not just this person's health, but their family issue. They got invited. A few of them got invited to weddings compared to their non-black counterparts. And then on the flip side, the patients or the research subjects wrote more notes about their black doctors and that visit, and also talked about all this non-medical stuff. So there was some increased interaction, communication going on, which made us, or led us to conclude it was really about communication.
We kind of instinctively know that this is going on, and you also found too that because you had a sample of white respondents in the survey too, right? Correct. And they were more likely to select white doctors than black doctors, so this is all about familiarity. This is all about, cultural familiarity, who looks
Absolutely.
like you.
Cultural familiarity is trust.
Yeah.
Right? It's the ability to engage. Right? So you can, and so this, I'll give you a nuance. So one thing, like I said, I wasn't in the exam room, but I'll see the interaction in the hallway as they're walking from the exam room to a flu vaccine area.
Yeah.
Right? And a conversation might be with the black physician and the black male research subject. Okay, these are all recommended services. Let's go get your height and weight, and let's make sure you get your cholesterol and diabetes screening.
Right.
Versus with the non-black doctor, it's a question. Well, do you want this? Right, and now that's a nuance.
Yeah.
Right, but there's a comfort. There might be a comfort on the part of the black doctor, where he, in this case, is comfortable leading and suggesting.
Right.
And it's not a question. It's not. There's no is not an option.
Wait.
Right?
The other.
These are all recommended things.
The other question too is the black doctors. They're all male.
Correct. They're all
black male doctors.
Not black or male.
All black male doctors. And so they probably they know as a black male that, okay, well, you know what, these are issues that we all have, because doctors are human beings. We tend to forget doctors are human beings too. They're not automatons, and they have doctors have the same health challenges and issues as everyone else. So as a black male, you understand, you know what, disproportionately, I know we're impacted by these, like diabetes, cholesterol, prostate. I'm just going to be more forward, because we brothers here. I'm just going to let him know, like, hey, you need to do this.
Absolutely. And you might see your son in that person, right? You might see your dad in that person. You might see your boy, your buddy, your fraternity brother. I mean, something in that person, because that is your you have a shared lived experience.
Right. That's fascinating. We've been talking with Dr. Owen Garrick. He is founder, COO of Bridge Clinical Research, President and Chief Operating Officer, of Bridge Clinical Research. For more information on them, they're based out in Oakland. It's bridgeclinical.com. Do I have that right? Bridge Clinical Research, bridgeclinical.com? Right. If you want to get more information on what they're doing, some of the studies that they're involved in, some of the work that they're involved in, and I'm real curious about what Bridge does. You connect. You're helping clinical researchers connect with patients, and also you're kind of making connections between those specialized or those unique, diverse demographics with medical institutions.
Absolutely, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we do two things. We help drug companies and biotech companies. We manage their clinical trials, and our focus our mission is increasing diversity in clinical trials. So we really believe that you can't know if a drug works in a population, and you can call that population men versus women, old versus young, black versus white, unless they participate in that study. And then secondly, we, about maybe 4 years ago now, started our own internal research portfolio to look at issues around health systems change, health disparities, of which this study that we've been talking about is an outgrowth.
Well, it's fascinating because it's something we don't think about. I mean, how huge is that now, especially in what's that aspect of the medical field like right now? You know, especially there's so much conversation about transforming, disrupting American healthcare. Then there's conversations and worries about lack of federal government investment in medical research, right? So what's that space look like right now?
So there are a few things that are going on, and you're spot on. There's been decreased funding for a number of years, and the main avenue for at least biomedical research from the government is the National Institutes of Health. And the NIH actually does more research than any drug company. Most people don't, or funds more research than any drug company. Most people don't realize that. So that is absolutely happening. There's increasing competition for these grants, and frankly, you could argue that there's just less research going on because there are less dollars, and decisions have to be made, right? Whether or not you want to fund lung cancer research versus sickle cell disease research. Now you're having, given with shrinking budgets, you're forced to make these decisions. The other thing that's happening is when we look at black and brown people or people of color, we've been historically underrepresented in clinical trials. And as we move toward this issue of precision medicine, you know, we are even more underrepresented in this area of precision medicine and genomic analysis. Now, race isn't purely a biologic. It is not a biologic construct, right? But it does have some biologic basis, and there's an environmental component and social environmental component of race. And I think on your last segment you were talking a bit about that, right? So if you live in an area with higher pollutants, right, you're going to have an increase in very different asthma, right, than someone who has asthma in Nebraska and lives around cornfields.
Yeah.
Right, and so that's not necessarily a biologic thing, but given our demographics, and I think your last segment really highlighted this, you know, you have a lot of black and brown people living in some cases, you know, more polluted areas. So the ability to treat and manage and prevent their form of asthma, as an example, is something that needs to be studied because it might be very different than treating and preventing asthma from, you know, someone who might live in a more rural area.
Yeah. We can talk with Dr. Owen Garrick, President, Chief Operating Officer of Bridge Clinical Research. Go to bridgeclinical.com for more information on what they're doing. Also to check up on some of that research, like what we've been discussing. The report that he co-authored, that he did with his colleagues for the National Bureau of Economic Research. It's entitled "Does Diversity Matter for Health? Experimental Evidence from Oakland Matching Black Doctors with Black Males, or Black male patients with Black doctors, seeing how that works out," and does some very fascinating and very enlightening results here. So definitely something to follow up on and talk more about. We ran out of time. I was so fascinated by this topic. I was fascinated when I read about this paper. When I went through the paper myself, and I had to have one of you on. So I'm so glad you made it, Dr. Gregg. We have to let you go, but at some point we're going to touch on this subject again. So it'd be great to have you back. But thanks so much again for your time.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for your time, and hopefully your audience got something out of it, and happy to come back anytime.
All right, we'll do that. We'll do a part 2 for sure. All right, thank you so much, sir. All right, take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And that ends our Vital Signs segment. This segment brought to you by Moravia Health. Moravia Health, because there's no place like home. MoraviaHealth.com for more information. At Moravia Health, I want to thank them for making this Vital Signs segment possible. Let's take a quick break. When we come back on the other side, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. And you'll also be joined by Kalila Brown Dean, Quinnipiac University, coming up next here on Reality Check with open phone lines at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Listen to Word Radio on the go with the Word Radio app. Search for WURD in your favorite app store today and take us with you wherever you go. Stay connected to Word Radio, independent Black media.
B2B is on a mission to save our children. Shoot for the Stars basketball camp invites you to sponsor a deserving student for their boys and girls basketball camp from July 18th to July 19th at the School of the Future located at 4021 Parkside Avenue from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. The cost is just $250 per week. Your support will play a vital role in helping them provide valuable basketball instruction to students, both boys and girls, from the ages of 8 to 18. For information, call 215-778-6259.
Listen live at wordradio.com.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesmaned the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word app, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900, as we bring on Kalila Brown Dean, political science professor out of Quinnipiac University, which is also home of the Quinnipiac University poll, that everyone's talking about recently. In fact, how are you doing, Professor? I was on Reverend Sharpton's show earlier today, Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton. He called it the Q poll. It's like, oh, you mean Quinnipiac? He's like, yeah, the Q poll said. So,
that is close enough.
That's close enough. Yeah, he's like, yeah, that Q poll everyone was talking about. So, when Sharpton's talking about the Q poll, everyone's talking about the Q poll. What was your take on that? And good to have you back this week. What's your take on what the Quinnipiac poll is showing us? Showing Biden hemorrhaging a significant amount of black voter support. He's still in the lead, just barely, but Kamala Harris definitely has gained a lot of ground, especially with black voters.
I think that the poll maps onto what a lot of us felt watching that debate. Mm-hmm. For most Americans, this was Kamala Harris's introduction to them, not just to America as a whole, but even for a lot of black voters. They had seen her in some of those congressional hearings. They saw her take Brett Kavanaugh to task, but they didn't really know a lot about her. And this was her way to do this. It also made clear that if Joe Biden wants to really win this thing, he can't use those old school tactics for the new school rules of this political game.
Yeah, and we got the phone lines open too. Kalila Brown Dean, who's at KBD PhD, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. I actually have Mike out of Virginia, out of your home state, who's calling in for a reality check. Mike, how are you doing?
Doing great, Charles. Thank you, and hello to your guest. I got a question. I see that black Democratic Jamie Harrison, I believe his name is, running for
right in South Carolina
to unseat Lindsey Graham. Mm-hmm. So my question is, what is it that someone like myself from Virginia, or someone like yourself out in Philly, and what can we do to help support and help push his candidacy forward, other than the the donation and that sort of thing online?
Right. Thanks for that question, Mike. We do need to talk about Jamie Harrison. Former South Carolina Democratic Party chair, also vice chair for the DNC, the national DNC. And we had Jamie Harrison on here a couple of times on Reality Check, but this was before he didn't say anything he was going to run for Senate. So I don't know how we're going to get him back. He's actually raised, I think, last check, he just announced that he raised about $1.5 million just in the first couple of months for his Senate campaign against Lindsey Graham. So, Professor, talk about that. How can folks support an effort that at first glance seems kind of impossible but's needed in a place like South Carolina?
I'm so glad that Mike raised that point, and it's no surprise to me that he's from the Commonwealth of Virginia, 2 up, 2 down. What we can do, Mr. Mary, is what you just did, was reminding people that we don't have to accept politics as usual. So whether that's putting out on our social media, hey, keep in mind, there's this brother running for Senate in South Carolina. You know, black folks have 2 degrees of separation. We all know someone who lives in South Carolina or who has family in South Carolina. A lot of people that I encounter here in the Northeast have South Carolina roots. So to talk to them, to say, talk to your family members who are still there. If you have military service members who are stationed in South Carolina, let them know. But I also don't underestimate the power of that donation. Something as small as $5 can help a lot of these candidates like Jamie reach some of those markers. So it's not so much the amount that we give, it is about the bulk of that giving that lets them be viewed as a credible candidate and then attract more money. Because unfortunately in this democracy, green is what moves votes.
And, you know, it's interesting that you bring that up, and I really appreciate you, Mike, for bringing that question up. We might change a little the conversation here just a little bit, because I want to just focus in on Jamie Harrison, because that's an important Senate race. Because we've been having these conversations and people whining about and complaining about people like Lindsey Graham, senator in South Carolina, who's also a big Trump booster in the Senate. We complain about people like Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader in Kentucky. It's like, okay, if you're tired of them, then, you know, get the plan together. Get the plan on how to unelect them. Like, I'm tired of complaining about folks. Like, you don't hear us on here complaining all the time about, you know, Trump got that July 4th parade. This is probably the first time in like a couple of days I even mentioned that parade. It's like, I don't care. Like, just get it together and vote him out of office if it's that bad, right? So,
and that's what we have to do. We have to claim ownership. Nothing about that parade, nothing about that allocation of money is going to fundamentally change the conditions facing black folks in this country.
Right.
Full stop. So even if Lindsey Graham wins that election, it puts him on notice that you can't take it for granted. You cannot deny the power of black women voters, black voters in general, but particularly black women. Because of a number of institutional policies, there are more black women eligible to vote in South Carolina than there are black men.
Right.
That's an institutional way to push people. I can't trust you, Lindsey Graham, that if you are not going to be loyal to your deceased good friend, the late Senator John McCain, why should I expect you to be loyal to me? And if there's one thing that we know about black folks are incredibly forgiving, but they're also very loyal. That's where we push the envelope. Instead of accepting it, instead of complaining, the question we have to ask is, what do we do and when do we do it? That time is right now.
Yeah, we're talking with Kalila Brown Dean, political science professor at Quinnipiac University. Go to @KBDPhD on social media, also quinnipiacuniversity.edu or @quinnipiac.edu online to learn more about the institution where she teaches, joining us here on Reality Check. And as we're looking at that new field, or how the field is shaping, Kalila, you know, to talk about who's losing support as others are gaining it. What's happening there? What sorts of trend lines are we seeing there? Like, okay, so Kamala's gone up in the polls, not just in that Quinnipiac poll, but other polls. Where's she getting that from? And is it really just people who? I was having a conversation actually with someone today who was saying, you know what? When Kamala first announced, I was with Kamala. This was a black male, black man, and he was like, but then Joe came in, and I was like, well, I gotta go with Joe. But then after Thursday, I'm back with Kamala. So it's maybe not really a matter of everyone was originally with Joe as far as black voters are concerned. They probably kind of already liked folks like Kamala Harris or even a Cory Booker, who I thought Cory Booker did really well last week. We had that conversation, but they finally found an excuse to exit themselves or detach themselves from Joe Biden.
I want people to start asking themselves not just who you with, but why, right? Why is it that our expectations of a Kamala Harris seem to be so markedly different from a Cory Booker or any other candidate. So that as you see that Kamala Harris is emerging in the polls, Elizabeth Warren is doing very well, other people like Beto O'Rourke, who I think after last week's performance, it's clear. I can't understand people who are so excited about him. There was nothing that he said last week that made me say, oh, this is someone that I want
This is the dude, right?
Right? Like, no, you can't come from Texas, speak Spanish in an English-only state to pander to voters who, on every other measure, you don't care about their issues because you didn't do the due diligence to find out about it. What I think is key here, and it's going to be a challenge particularly for Kamala Harris, but for other women in this race as well, we have to call a thing a thing. I say that a lot on this show. What is it about voting and supporting a woman that makes some people uncomfortable? And to be clear, not just men, but there are a lot of women voters who are also having these very gendered.
Oh, yeah.
Kamala Harris doesn't have a race problem. We have a race problem. Kamala Harris doesn't have a black woman problem. We do. So don't tell me you care about reparations without acknowledging the leadership of black women like Sojourner Truth, like Harriet Tubman, and Mum Bet. Don't tell me that the Democratic Party takes you for granted without acknowledging the brilliance and the bravery of a Fannie Lou Hamer to go to that 1964 convention, give that impassioned speech about no two seats. Black women have always been there for us at times when the law said we shouldn't be there. Let's put that to the side.
This is a very good point. Talking about some of those issues, you mentioned reparations, that came up briefly in that debate last week. But we also looking at other issues like immigration took up a lot of time in both of those debates. And I noticed some folks started slipping that in and wondering if Democrats are equipped to handle or manage that particular subject, and an argument that's resonating, whether it's disturbing or not. It has some disturbing dimensions to it, but people basically pushing that argument that, hey, they're worried about those migrants. They're not even resident citizens and they don't vote. And but they're not worried about us black folks. But I think Democrats are really underestimating the power of that conversation. We hear it here on Reality Check quite often. Sometimes people call in, or sometimes people just quietly send me emails complaining about it. So how do Democrats manage that?
Whatever the issue is, whatever the policy question is, I want your listeners to ask this fundamental question, and that is, how does this affect the power that government has to make decisions over my everyday life, right? Many of us know someone who is incarcerated in this country. And if we say it is not a basic human right for children, for young people, for human beings to have access to clean running water, to have basic toiletries, to work on your hygiene, to make sure we are not spreading communicable diseases, to make sure that people are not dying from diseases that easily could have been prevented, right? If we can do that at the border, what stops the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for saying, well, we don't need to provide toiletry items to prisons across Pennsylvania? Or to say children in Philadelphia public schools aren't really entitled to have fresh, clean running water. It's not about how you feel about migrants, right? This is a human rights issue. And when you cede that ground on basic human rights and decency, you allow this government to take advantage of the most vulnerable, which most often are black people, are brown people, and our children.
No, it's go to @KBDPhD for more engagement, more just keeping track of what she's up to and what she's talking about. Phone lines are still open at 215-634-8065. If you have any questions or you also want to participate in the discussion, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Kalila, I have to ask you about, so you have this moment, obviously we have July 4th tomorrow. We got the parade coming up, and then now there's this conversation about flags on sneakers, which I haven't brought up. This is just me, and feel free to push back if it isn't you. I'm just like, that's as a non-issue as I've ever seen. I'm just kind of like, huh? And I mean, this brother, like, I have yet to hear if Colin Kaepernick has gotten registered to vote yet. I'm sorry, I'm just going to put it out there like
There's that part.
I have not heard him say, yeah, you know, I finally got registered. And I'm like, okay, so now you got 9 figures in your bank account. And I want that gig. I really want that gig. 9 figures in my bank account, and I just go around starting stuff. And I just like, I'm trying to understand I was trying to really grasp why that's important. Why the Betsy Ross flag issue is important. It's not, but yet and still, he's made it important, and now it's going to kind of like it's shades of 2016.
I mean, how do I say this in the most scholarly way possible? I just don't care.
I don't care. Right.
I don't care about this conglomerate, this multi-billion-dollar organization called Nike is selling more shoes and more merchandise based on controversy. I just don't care. And what I do appreciate is that Colin Kaepernick has figured out the way of capitalism, which says, if I have the money, then I can take the microphone. I don't fault that brother for that.
Okay, yeah, I give him that.
Next, right? Like, you pointed out that this is offensive to people. Tell me what's next.
Right.
What's offensive to me is that there are still people making decisions that allow law enforcement officers who don't see me as a human to then police me.
Right.
Tell me how you're going to use your money to offer scholarships to young people who too often face the impossible choice of, do I go pursue an education knowing that it's taking money away from my parents and my siblings who are younger, or do I just say, I'm going to do me and everybody else figures it out?
Yeah.
So I'm not getting in his pocket. I just want to know, what's your next step, brother? And
Right.
It has to be more than just saying, let me drop the mic and tell you why this flag is offensive. Because the reality is that putting the U.S. flag on any article is technically illegal. So unless you're going to talk about finding all these people who are going to show up on the National Mall tomorrow in their flag shirts, $200 a piece, and then using that to launch the reparations fund or GoFundMe account,
Right.
I just can't care.
Right. So Kalila Brown Dean. Go to AKVD PhD for more, and she teaches at Quinnipiac. She teaches political science at Quinnipiac University. Go to quinnipiac.edu. Also, the home of the Q poll. I love that, the Q poll. That's what I'm gonna start calling it. Go to quinnipiac.edu for more. Kalila, thanks so much as always, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Charles, just let Mr. Jim know I'm still working on this case. Have a great weekend.
All right. Okay. We'll definitely let him know. Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, keep us posted. All right. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Right back here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open. We'll be right back.
Listen to Word Radio on the go with the Word Radio app. Search for WURD in your favorite app store today and take us with you wherever you go. Stay connected to Word Radio, independent Black media.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Support independent Black media and join the Forward movement now at 215-425-7875
or visit wordradio.com.
Hey, Pico customers, how would you like to save energy and money and get $75 for that old working fridge or freezer in your garage or basement? Well, Pico makes it easy for you. They'll come to your home, pick it up, dispose of it responsibly, and give you $75. That's right, $75. Just schedule your pickup at pico.com/recycling or call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE today. That's pico.com/recycling or call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
Yeah, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. A couple questions. Some folks called in. They just need a little bit of information. We have Vanessa K. DeLuca on earlier. She is the editor-in-chief of a new magazine for women of color that's just launched called Zora. Zora, exactly, named after or in honor of the great, legendary author, writer Zora Neale Hurston. So that is at Zora. The website for that is zora.medium.com. So it's Zora, Z-O-R-A, Zora.medium, M-E-D-I-U-M, like medium, you know, like how you have like tall, medium, large, or small, medium, large, Zora.medium.com. And you can go there and you can check out and read all sorts of great content that's there. I've been reading it myself too, and it's fascinating. It's a magazine specifically dedicated to women of color. So it's not just black women. You know, she's bringing all women of color. So it's mostly black women perspectives, but you're seeing perspectives from Latinx women, from women from India and elsewhere. You know, so it's an interesting collection of thoughts and writing. So definitely I encourage folks to check it out at Zora.medium.com. I get a feeling we're going to have quite a few Zora contributors on this show talking about some of their works. So I'm glad we made that connection with the editor-in-chief, who's the former editor-in-chief of Essence magazine, no doubt. Also, people were asking about how do I give to Jamie Harrison. Jamie Harrison is a black man, and he's also the former chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party. He was the chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party for 4 years. And he is currently a vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, and he's running for Senate. He's running against Lindsey Graham next year, 2020. So people want to know, how can I contribute to Jamie Harrison's campaign? So he's not a Philly area candidate. So this goes against my policy, really station policy here on Word, because just kind of boosting candidates like that randomly. I'll do this. I'll make an exception here since he's in South Carolina, and this is against Lindsey Graham, who is he's just part of that evil empire kind of mix going on, and we need a black senator in a place like South Carolina for real, right? So go to JamieHarrison.com to learn more about him. Jamie, J-A-I-M-E, Harrison.com. That's Jamie Harrison. He's already raised $1.5 million, and that's not bad. It's actually it's kind of record breaking because he just announced his candidacy, his official candidacy. And actually he's breaking the record for the most ever raised by a Democratic Senate challenger in South Carolina. So it's already a good first step, and a lot of those donations are small dollar donations. So JamieHarrison.com for more information. And yeah, put the word out to your friends and family, like Kalila said earlier, just a few minutes ago. Put out the word to your friends and family who are connected to South Carolina. I got some folks who are connected to South Carolina. I was just in South Carolina last year for their homecoming, and stay tuned. We probably going to be going to South Carolina State homecoming this year, and I'm actually kind of working on some things quietly, maybe some broadcasting from down South Carolina, especially before that big primary they're going to have. But so we know folks. I've got some folks by marriage from South Carolina. A couple of them are like, I don't know, nobody can beat Lindsey Graham. Politics is the art of the possible, right? So if we really want to get it done, it can get done. And Jamie Harrison is very skilled. Now, some people are saying he's running for Senate so he can take on Congressman James Clyburn, who people feel has been there way too long in his seat in South Carolina. He's the only black member of Congress out of South Carolina. He's a very powerful, influential cat that's in the Democratic caucus, Democratic leadership on the House side of things. But people feel that he's been there too long. So some people feel like Jamie's really setting up the stage to go after Clyburn. But I don't know. When you look at those kind of fundraising totals, and then you look at the way Jamie Harrison is flexing, and then there's a moment going on with Lindsey Graham. A lot of people are like rather distressed about Graham and the things he's doing and saying. it's a credible challenge. This is Jamie Harrison is very credible for a state like South Carolina. So let your friends and fam know. Don't make this a Michael Jordan moment in North Carolina back in '92 in that Senate race when Harvey Gantt could have become the first elected black senator of North Carolina. It was the mayor of Charlotte. We could have got rid of Jesse Helms back in the early '90s. And then Michael Jordan's like, well, they don't, Republicans buy my shoes too. I can't stand that dude. Like, I just can't stand, like, I can't. I've never, especially since then. And I was young back then. I was in college. I was just getting ready to go to college. No, I was in college. And I was like, I'm never buying Air Jordans. Like, I never do it because I just thought that was just wrong. It's like, brother, really? And could have knocked out Jesse Helms and, Harvey Gantt lost, a credible challenger to Jesse Helms. This is a moment happening in South Carolina, the southern neighbor, that definitely I think Jamie Harrison can truly take, but he's going to need the help of a state where I think it's over 30% of the population is black in South Carolina. Huge potential massive black electorate in South Carolina. So he could, if anyone can get it done in a state like that, it's probably Lindsey Graham. Let me go to the phone lines. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let me take on George from Center City who's calling in. George, what's up?
Well, the good thing is that I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm going to be, for that campaign, I'm going to be in South Carolina for at least 60 days.
Okay.
They got quite a few people there and contacted that will be going in there. And, Lindsey Graham is real easy to beat. He just never had anybody to run against him.
That's right. Thank you for saying that.
And if you go down there, he's not the most loved person. He's just always been able to bully people away from running against him and buy them off.
That's right.
So this time there, he'll have some people who know how to really bully and handle situations. And you got to remember, it's a lot of modernization down there now. It's not like the farmland that people think like it was 20 years ago.
Right.
It's really diverse, interracial marriages, well-educated. It's just totally different than when Lindsey Graham first got there. That interracial stuff, they don't play all that down there as much as they used to.
Yeah.
But the second thing what I called you for is this. That power plant there in Nicetown, see, the people there doing the right thing. You get together, and then there's a thing like Representative Rosita came on and said that she don't know how they even got the permits that they got or the permission they got because it never came through the state, and the city's never saying that. So therefore, Rosita got it all held up because she's saying, show me the paperwork of the proper way this got done.
Right.
So the people in Nicetown got a real good thing going on there.
Okay.
She's handling her business on that.
All right.
The second thing, the third thing is, Charles, is that I let all things go till we see any type of results. That's what it's all about, results.
Yeah.
Now, these, gangster Bible, these Bible gangsterism, I have yet to see them at Hanneman. I have yet to see them in Nicetown. I have yet to see these Bible gangsters anywhere protesting or helping the community at any issue other than those cops.
What you talking about? You talking about the black church?
Yeah, I haven't seen.
Yeah, I'm like, where? That's a fair question.
You're right. They all should be
fair question.
RICO, running a continual church enterprise.
Right.
Instead of running a continual criminal enterprise. That's why I call them the Bible gangsters. They're all a bunch of frauds.
Okay.
They sit up there and do all this hooping and hollering, but I don't see them. I have yet to see them at anything where somebody got killed. I have yet to see them invite anybody in their church for a funeral. They want $1,000 to $1,500 to do a funeral.
Right.
I mean, so therefore, do I have any respect for them? No, none.
It's a good point. That could create a sea change.
You're right.
In terms of focus on issues like Hanneman, the public health system throughout the city, and also like these things we're talking about, like the Nicetown, the natural gas plants.
But Charles, let me say this here, and because we're running short on time, and I want to try to get it all in. Every major issue when it's becoming the black and brown people, I have yet to see any major players of African Americans step up. Mainly the Bible gangsters. They never step up to anything unless they can get a meeting where as though it's press, they can get their picture taken, or they can have a media thing and do a photo op.
Yeah.
people should stop listening to any of that race baiting foolishness that they be putting down until they start coming into community to support the community. They talk about white folks all day long, but I've yet to see them do anything for black people, other than when white folks call them in their office and give them a check and say, now you just keep on doing what you're doing, boy. You're doing a good job there. I really love what you're doing. And you know what they do? They just tap dance on out of there.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not what I hear, it's what I see and know. And they all buck dance, got nice white teeth and all that there, and laugh and grin. But you watch, just watch how all this play out when they come back, when council come back in September. Watch the numbers start escalating now from July on all the way to council. Watch how all these homicides escalate. And you know what? It's playing out just like I say. The chief and commanding officers, the top brass can say, oh, we doing this, and they're doing nothing, which I wouldn't either. If you're going to dog me out, call me everything but a person, and disrespect me and all that there, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, my job. If you look at all the homicides investigations, how far are they going? How many of them been solved? You know what the number is? Probably, we'll go with probably, okay?
Yeah, okay.
And
I don't know.
I'm saying this here for people to understand, be careful what you ask for, because everything you ask for, there's a price. You know, now you went after those cops. Now those cops are coming after us in our community. You can say it's racist or whatever, but all them other cops, they all stick together. That's why all these homicides, that's why all these fools running around with guns, that's why people are doing what they're doing and feeling free to do it. Police going to make 8 hours, 16, 12, 14 hours of overtime, whatever they can make. They're making theirs, minding their business. They say, hey, man, the camera's on. I'm not losing my pension for some dumb stuff. And remember, Charles, African Americans are not, contrary to belief that these gangster preachers want you to believe, you're not the majority in this city. You're a minority. If you start looking around in your neighborhood, there's more white folks in your neighborhood than there is black. West Philadelphia, I say within the next year, will be completely white.
It's still near half, but it's not majority black, but it's still near half black. Okay. I mean, those are the census numbers. Those are the numbers. You gotta give me numbers. But George, you gotta give me numbers. You gotta give me numbers to counter the numbers that are clearly on the table, showing it's still a lot of, even when you're just driving around anecdotally, there's a lot of black folks. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of white folks coming in. But you got to have numbers to counter those numbers.
Is North Philadelphia predominantly white, or is it predominantly black?
It's predominantly black in North Philadelphia.
No, it's not. When the last time you've been through North Philly?
Just really the other day.
Okay, you must didn't drive too far. Because if you get off the expressway all the way to Broad Street, all you do is see people.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of white people. I am. But see, but I'm looking. But the data's just not bearing that out yet.
The voter registration says it's 65%. Look at all that there. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And where do you see black folks living in $300,000 and $400,000 houses? Because that's what is predominantly in North Philadelphia.
Yeah.
That's Society Hill too.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So you have a good one, Brother Charles.
Okay.
And all the people in North Philadelphia and West Philadelphia, black, enjoy your last 2 barbecues, because after that day you'll be going to a beer cooking or whatever they call roasting the pig and all that. Because your days are over. You're done. You're finished.
Oh boy. All right, George. I appreciate you though. Thanks so much. All right, George, out of Center City. I got to see numbers though. I just can't. That's what I base it off of, and that's what the numbers right now. Although it is dwindling. So, but anyway, we have to look at that a little bit more deeply. That ends this Wednesday, pre-July 4th. It ain't Independence Day, but it's definitely July 4th. It's another date, pre-July 4th edition of Reality Check. But definitely use July 4th as a way to find common ground. To find some commonalities with your neighbor. So, because we all still living in the same space, and that is the one thing about July 4th to reflect on and to utilize it for. So, because all this division, all this polarization, it doesn't end up well ever. And that's just, history tells us that time and time again. So we do have to figure this out. And there are things about July 4th that we have to reflect on and celebrate too. We're going to have to do that. So we'll talk more about it next week during the Monday edition of Reality Check. Reality Check off tomorrow. and it is, as you know, off on Fridays as well. Continue to go to @EllisonReport, #RealityCheck. I want to thank Troy Wilmore. The board is still here in the studio, getting ready for Sincerely Sarita on the lounge. So keep your radio locked into the home of Black Talk Media, WURD. Go to @onWURD, #onWURD as well. Don't forget about that. I want to thank all our guests, all the folks that called in as well. Really appreciate everyone listening in too, and people call from other places beyond the greater Philadelphia area. Thanks so much for listening in through your live stream. All right, folks, please, in the meantime, I want you to stay smart, stay sharp, especially stay smart about the foods you're going to be eating, all that cholesterol. Anyway, stay smart, stay sharp, but more importantly, stay safe out there, really. Stay cool, too. Please stay cool out there. Stay safe. Have a great weekend.